Hello. Hi. Welcome. Thanks for joining me again. Hope everything's working and it's on. Okay, good. All right. So we're going to do something a little different today, something I've never really done, but something that is apparently popular. I'm going to be playing a video, which is this Oxford Union debate about Islam and commenting. So I will be playing it, pausing it, and offering my 2 cents. And the reason for that is because I've been asked by many of you to do just that. This is an Oxford Union debate about Islam, which I've gathered some information about it. Apparently, it took place over a month ago, but it was just released, the video, very recently, a few days ago, and it's been creating a stir of sorts, a buzz. And I haven't watched it. So I think ideally maybe I could have watched it and tried to get the best clips, but I decided, well, no, if I have to watch it, you have to watch it with me. So you're going to have to join me. Now, I just realized it's over 2 hours. So I don't know what's going to happen. We're just going to just see what we can do, play it, maybe stop. Maybe there'll be a part two if it warrants it. Alternatively, I'm looking at your live chats and hello, everyone. Greetings from Ireland. Hi. If you want to tell me what you think are the actually most important sections to watch and comment, that might be good too. Hopefully there'd be some kind of consensus. Otherwise, I'm just going to start from the beginning because I don't know. I know that I don't know what's worthwhile. Hi, Oregon. What's worthwhile, what's worth watching, what's not. So the only way to do it actually is just to play it from the start. Like I said, if that's the case, I'm not going to continue the whole thing because the whole thing's over 2 hours plus my own commentary. That's going to be very long. And so we'll see how it goes. One idea is actually that I could, because it's two sides. One side is arguing against Islam. One is arguing on behalf of Islam. I think it's not maybe a whole lot necessary to look at the side that's arguing against Islam because that's kind of my position. It may be more fruitful to actually just look at the, hey, Netherlands, Finland, hello. Serbia, hi. Maybe just look at the Muslim, the pro-Muslim side. That kind of makes sense. I mean, that is the great wisdom of Caliph Omar, if you recall, when he burned the Library of Alexandria, according to Islamic sources. The conqueror of Egypt, Amr bin al-As, sent to Omar saying, look, there's this library basically is building with all these scrolls and books. Alaska, Canada, hi, India, greetings. Anyway, he sent a message to Omar saying, there's all these writings, what do we do with them? And Omar, shrewd caliph that he is, said, well, if their writings agree with us, we don't need them. And if they go against us, we don't want them. So burn them. So in that same spirit, I suppose I can fast forward the anti-Islamic parts simply because, we don't need them. We know those arguments, but we do want to see maybe the pro-Islam arguments and try to tear them apart. Hello, Sweden and Germany, Texas. People are from all over the place here. So they are, and that's awesome. Swiss. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to start playing it, and let's see what happens. Yeah. All right, whatever. Here we go. If I can figure it out. Aha.
Or is it suitably heightened? Do I need to raise this up, or is it suitably heightened for the Luton community? Before Neville Chamberlain flew to Germany to appease Adolf Hitler, he said, European peace is what I'm aiming at, and I hope this journey may open the way to get it. And here we are, 87 years later, and European peace and peace in the West is being threatened again. Upon his return from Germany with his piece of paper, Chamberlain said, "We are resolved that the method of consultation shall be the method adopted to deal with any other questions that may concern our two countries." And 338 days later, Britain was at war with Germany. So this morning I was thinking about this debate and the worthiness of consultation, which Chamberlain invoked, and the notion this House believes the West is right to be suspicious of Islam. And then I started thinking about a cartoon that I have here in this envelope. It's a cartoon which I think it instills in me feeling.
All right, as expected already, we're having technical difficulties. There's an echo. So apparently I need to turn off my audio. Is that what it is? Okay, let's see how this works.
It's much, much more worrying than suspicion.
Let me know if there's any difference.
But, you know, in the spirit of consultation, I'll just leave it here for the moment, if we're okay with that. So, first let us start with the word suspicion.
Better?
There was a minority, going back to Chamberlain and that brilliant foreign policy, there was a minority who were gravely suspicious of fascism leading up to the Second World War and were very vocal in that suspicion, who thought that Chamberlain's appeasement policy was just wrong. That far from being the peace in our time he promised, our appeasement would only serve to embolden Hitler. One of those who faced the most criticism for his prescience, suspicious prescience perhaps, was Winston Churchill. He saw fascism for what it was, an existential threat to the West. No one needs a history lesson from me, but it is possibly worth noting now, especially here, and thanks to our lovely friends outside, that it is perfectly acceptable and actively encouraged in every school, university, TV channel, and media organisation across the West to be suspicious of fascism. In fact, if we listen to our friends outside, that's not enough. You've got to be an anti-fascist. You've got to take direct action against fascism. Chamberlain today just seems like a moronic simpleton to me. So perhaps the deaths of millions of people could have been avoided if only Churchill's suspicion had been heeded, that his perspective acknowledged, but he stood alone whilst the train continued to hurtle towards us because we didn't want to upset anybody. It is an entirely natural and positive human instinct to be suspicious of many things. From teaching our children not to get in cars with strangers, to friends checking in on each other when one is going on a date with a new person for the first time, suspicion is healthy. It sparks in every single sinew of our being. It is the product of generational caution in pursuit of survival. It's central to our very fundamentalist of instincts. It isn't prejudice, it's prudence. Suspicion isn't hatred either. It's pattern recognition. And I would like to make it clear at this point, Arwa, I would like to thank you so much for inviting us to have this debate. And I know you've struggled so much with people trying to cancel you, and I know exactly what that feels like. So thank you so much. But I think I would like to make it very clear that I am not here to express suspicions of individual Muslims at all. There are many Muslims, including within my own family, who I love deeply. And as a Christian, I'm commanded to love my neighbour and to pray for my enemy. It is my most strongly held belief on this planet that every single human life is sacred and all lives matter. But I am absolutely not, and I will not, be commanded to love or submit to ideas or ideologies. As was mentioned earlier, as Jesus said, render to Caesar what is Caesar. Within one directive, he created the separation between church and state, which in Islam does not exist, which Islam literally means submission. So there is no church, there is no state, there is only Islam. My suspicion of Islam, therefore, is strongly, and I think reasonably, held. Islam is a comprehensive social, political, and military doctrine which leaves no part of its followers' lives untouched. As Andrew Hussey, the British historian, says, Islam more closely resembles a ruthlessly efficient war machine than a religion. Islam is borderless, expansionary, and interested only in submission to Allah. And then for us, for some of us, unfortunate non-believers, we're given three choices.
Point of information. When was the last time there was a jihad declared against a foreign government and the expansion of Muslim lands into non-Muslim lands? When was the last time?
What?
All right, let's pause that for a second. All right, so far so good. I think the audio issue has been fixed, I hope. Brief commentary about what was just said. So first of all, I just realized that this is the actual debate is about if the West has the right to be suspicious of Islam. That's very innocuous. In other words, the actual motion that they're debating isn't an assertive comment such as, "Oh, is Islam violent? Is Islam jihadist, etc." It's actually very soft. It's basically, do we even have the right to question these? To question Islam? Should we actually look at Islam as being in any way, shape, or form different than other religions? Okay, so that's what they're debating. I think the very fact that people are suspicious, and they are, means that we have the right to be suspicious. I don't even think that's open to debate, right? But so that doesn't bode well that that's how it was phrased. Now, what that gentleman said, so far so good. I agree with him. I like the point that he made about this is not against individual Muslims. I've made that point repeatedly. You know, I study, I talk about, I comment about, I critique, I criticize Islam as a body of teachings, right? As an ideology. And the people who are guilty of it are the ones who literally follow it. Now, does that mean every single guy named Muhammad follows it, knows it, implements it? No. Just no less than every single guy named John or Christian, by virtue of being John or Christian, follows, Christianity. So obviously that makes sense. And I'd say that's a fair start, that Islam's a little different. So now let's see what someone was going to question him. Let's see what that was about.
See what I'm talking
But you
about.
said that it's a military war machine. It's been around for quite a long time.
A point of order has been raised.
When you're giving points of information, you need to be very audible. So
I thank the ex-president for his. I'm not sure that's a point of order.
I'm also, as people may or may not have noticed, I'm not an Islamic scholar, and I'm not into giving you a history lesson about the Quran. But I will give you a history lesson into the bits of the Quran that I understand, and the bits of Islam I understand through those that I love and from my readings. So Islam gives you three.
We got to see what the question was here, because that might have been of interest, actually.
Than a religion. Islam is born.
When was the last time that...
Well, for some of us, unfortunate non-believers, we're given three choices.
Point of information. When was the last time there was a jihad declared against a foreign government and the expansion of Muslim lands into non-Muslim lands? When was the last time?
What?
Okay, I'd like to answer that. I think he's trying to say, an actual formal government like Saudi Arabia, or, an actual state that's acknowledged. And he's trying to say, well, when's the last time that Islam declared an offensive jihad to conquer? Because, by the way, that is the true meaning of jihad. The ultimate meaning is it's offensive, it's expansionary, which I think is what he was saying earlier, that Islam is expansionary, which it is through jihad. So I think the questioner is saying, well, when's the last time that even happened? And my response is, what difference does that make? No Muslim country is in any position to go on an expansionary jihad. That's why it's not happening. In fact, according to the classical understanding of Islam, jihad is obligatory, and nations and caliphates and sultanates are to expand, but only when they can and when it's realistic, and when circumstances are such that it's opportune for them to actually invade their neighbors in the name of jihad. That's been the name of the game. It's always been like that. But if you can't, if your enemy, the infidel, is more powerful than you, well, then you don't go on a jihad. You make a truce, and you wait for a better time. So the fact that no modern Islamic country has declared jihad in any given time, that actually just makes perfect sense. That is in keeping with Islamic thinking and Sharia. They're not supposed to, because it would be suicide. Imagine, I don't know, the new government of Syria declares a formal jihad, and it gives, I don't know, it tells America, we're going to give you three options: convert, or pay tribute, jizya, or we're going to kill you. Not doesn't make sense, does it? Or to any European country. So within Islam itself, it's not like you're a foaming at the mouth jihadist, rabid maniac, and you have to declare jihad anywhere, anytime. No, you're supposed to do it reasonably and logically. And if Muslim countries or nations or caliphates, there isn't even a caliphate. So technically, these modern states aren't obligated to go on jihad. So it's a moot and distracting point, obviously. But anyway, let's continue. This is why I didn't really want to watch this, but okay.
See what I'm talking about.
But you said that it's a military war machine. It's been around for quite a long time.
A point of order has been raised.
When you're giving points of information, you need to be very audible, so
I thank the ex-president for his. I'm not sure that's a point of order.
I'm also, as people may or may not have noticed, I'm not an Islamic scholar, and I'm not into giving you a history lesson about the Quran. But I will give you a history lesson into the bits of the Quran that I understand, and the bits of Islam I understand through those that I love and from my readings. So Islam gives you three options, as far as I can tell, as a Westerner: submit, pay the jizya, the tax, which institutionalizes inferior status for non-Muslims in Islamic states. Or, excuse me, 3, war with Muslims. Right. Notably, within those three options that Islam offers you, there is not one option which says, let's live in peaceful coexistence as equals in a pluralistic society. Not once. Not once does it say that.
I'm certain you are aware that there is an entire chapter in the Quran, a chapter called O Disbelievers. The final line of that verse in the Quran is, to you is your faith and to me is mine. Are you aware of that chapter in the Quran, and are you aware of the teachings of tolerance the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah have taught us for centuries?
A Christian scholar. Thank you. I'm just going to explain to you, one of the reasons why I didn't want to start quoting Quran verses was because I didn't want to come here and start talking about, it says here that you chop people's heads off, it says here that you do that, and it says here that you do that. I'm sure that there are very, very, very many verses in the Quran that talk about peace and love and happiness. It's just all we get is the bombs, the running over, the knives and the beheadings. So I'll move on if that's all right. Thank you very much. I'm done. Move on. Thank you very much. So I've said, notably, peaceful coexistence with non-Muslims is not.
All right, this requires a little opining. So this woman comes up and says, whoa, but there's other Quran verses. I'm sure. I mean, all he basically said is he was talking about the militancy and how there is no coexistence in Islam between Muslims and non-Muslims on an equal level. Yeah, of course, absolutely true. There is no such thing at all. Okay, at best, you are a dhimmi, you pay tribute, you know your place, and you do not have the equal rights that a Muslim subject does. And immediately she jumps up, oh, but what about this verse? This is one of the most tired arguments that anyone can engage in, this cherry picking. Oh, look at this verse. As I think he's just indicating, and I'm sorry, I don't know these people's names too well. Okay, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not very good with names. Okay, anyway. This gentleman, who is correct, it's pointless to look at Quran verses constantly, because if all you want to do is look at verses, you can find anything. It's in there. And this is why you have to actually, this is why it's a science, they call it, Muslims. And the actual, the learned ones, the ulama, they mean they're the scientists, because there's a whole science to understand what is the true message of the Quran. We can talk about abrogation, for example, how, later verses abrogate, cancel earlier verses. And that's one of the primary arguments, which is basically all the later verses are the beheadings and the expansion and the violence and the subjugation. Quran 9:5, for example, is said to have abrogated over 120 peaceful verses. And Quran 9:5 is probably the most militant one, which says basically, anytime you find the mushrikeen, which means polytheists, okay, just lay in wait for them, ambush, kill them, enslave them, and just destroy them. And there's other more violent verses too, like 929. Anyway, that argument that woman made is really pathetic, which is, oh, I'm sure you've read that verse. Well, and anyway.
Opportunity offered. A position which can reasonably be held to say that it creates not just suspicion, but tension within a Western, secular, liberal, Christian goldfish bowl that Tom Holland tells us we all live in, right? That's where we live. We do. No one knows anything anymore. Everyone's feelings matter. So one thing is certain, and is backed up by all the data, Muslims living in the West are pretty suspicious of us. So I'm not going to talk about why the West should be suspicious of Islam. Let's talk about how suspicious Islam is of the West. The Policy Exchange report, titled Unsettled Belonging, published in 2016, which claims to be the most extensive research of British Muslims ever conducted, revealed that, let's do it, 43% of British Muslims supported the introduction of Sharia, not British law, Islamic law. 53% prefer to send their children to school with strong Muslim values, suspicious perhaps of Western ones. Maybe, I don't know. 44% of schools should be able to insist on face coverings. Does this sound like a community which seeks integration? Do we have a right to be suspicious of those who reject our values and the societal norms of their host country? 24% sympathise with violence organised by groups to protect their religion. That's what the Muslims say. And 31% thought it was acceptable to keep more than one wife, illegal in Britain, but fine in Sharia, apparently. And 35% believe that the Jews have too much power in the UK, 52% compulsory halal. I could go on and on and on and on. But most important to me is the free speech of this. So let's get this out, shall we? 78% of British Muslims believe that no publication should publish pictures of Muhammad. An overwhelming majority. That rises to 87%. That's 9 out of every 10 Muslims that are walking the streets today in a country which absolutely abandoned blasphemy laws. Suspicion is not strong enough a word. The West should resist Islam in the strongest terms on free speech grounds alone. So here we are with this cartoon, right? And it's time to show that I will not submit. I will not adhere to the religious laws of far-off places. Now, my wife asked me not to show this for fear of repercussions in my family, but I told her that if I did not, then I had already submitted to Islam. So here we are.
Is it not enough that half the team that invited you to this debate were Muslim women who wanted to hear out your expression and your arguments? Is it not enough that I, as a Muslim president, have invited you to this chamber to give your arguments? Is that not enough justification and evidence for you to believe that we do believe in free speech? I will not become the president of a free speech society.
Thank you, May I? Thank you very much. May I finish? Excuse me.
Point of order having been raised, I'll hear the ex-librarian.
It's a long time since I've been in this chamber and knew the rules off by heart. In the House of Commons, and we model ourselves on the House of Commons, props are not allowed. I wonder whether the rule on props is the same in the Oxford Union.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his point of order.
Excuse me for one second.
One moment.
In the absence,
Mr. Fox, one moment, Mr. Fox. The ex-president is also raising a point of order, I think.
Just it's helpful to inform the ex-librarian and others, at least my thought is modern society, that ban was not extended and to your fight Israel and Palestine flag.
Thank you. So, right. I just want to wrap this up.
I am going to rule on the point of order. There is no bar in the forms of the House against the use of props. However, I would encourage Mr. Fox to make the point and move on.
I was until point of order. So it is in that spirit that I will not submit that I show you this as an Englishman who believes in free speech. I will not submit. I will not bow down. Right. So, I think which rather proves the point I was trying to make, that in this envelope lived your fear, and your fear of Islam and what Islam will do to you that when you upset its very oversensitive sky wizard. And what lived in this room is a healthy and brilliant and noble British tradition of suspicion of Islam. I encourage you to pass the motion. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that was interesting. So he made it sound like he was going to pull out a blasphemous image of Muhammad. And I was really looking forward to that. But I guess he didn't, and he pulled up whatever. I don't know whose picture that was, but I guess the point was exactly what we just saw. You saw how tense everyone got, and all these, that woman got up, says, "Isn't it enough we allowed you? I'm a Muslim woman. I allowed you to speak here. Isn't that enough to show you, must you go there? Must you show this image of Muhammad?" And other people also had to offer their 2 cents. And and then he pulled out that picture. I wonder what would have happened, however, if he actually put out some mockery image of Muhammad. That might have been a better outcome. That actually would have been that really would have been great, because we would have seen the reaction, wouldn't we? But anyway, that wasn't bad either. Not bad. Okay, let us continue. Oops. Is it over? Oh, man. God. Give me a moment while I find the actual. Can someone send me the link on the chat for the full thing? And while I look, because I don't know what I'm doing, obviously. Oxford. Stay tuned. Aha. I found it. Bear with me.
I'm pleased to open this evening's debate, and I'm pleased to call on Mr. Oliver Jones-Lyons to open the debate for the proposition. Mr. Jones-Lyons.
I expect there's only one level of revelation is either is so popular in the Muslim community. Sir Jacob, many.
All right, check it out. I made a mistake. I think I played the wrong. I played a clip, not the whole thing. So I found the whole thing now, and I'm going to from the start. And when we get to the clip that we just saw, I will fast forward. All right? I got this. Have faith.
I'm pleased to open this evening's debate, and I'm pleased to call on Mr. Oliver Jones-Lyons to open the debate for the proposition. Mr. Jones-Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It'd be remiss of me not to begin by noting what an honour it is to be speaking today in what will ultimately prove to be one of those historic debates that shows why this place matters. Despite external pressure, internal pressure, political machinations, and every type of motion under the sun, this House voted clearly and decisively 2 weeks in a row to have this debate
and live up to this society's name of being the last bastion of free speech. We are here tonight because that principle matters and this motion matters. I rise to propose the motion that this House believes the West is right to be suspicious of Islam.
Is the echo thing happening? I think I fixed it, right? Yeah? All right, good.
The rise of Islam in the West has been the most notable and significant demographic change in the West over the course of the last few decades. Its effects, both positive and negative, are well known. But if we are fully honest with ourselves, it is certainly not a secret that the West is in fact suspicious of Islam.
Yes.
Tonight, the proposition will not cower away from the issue being debated here. It is not whether the enlightened West should be suspicious of every religion. It's about Islam. The burden for side proposition will be to prove the good reason exists, to find uniquely justifiable reasons to be suspicious in the religion of Islam. It is my belief those good reasons exist. It is my hope that this debate won't descend into being a series of increasingly technical theological gotchas, nor the slinging around of anecdotes. This debate, if it is to be honest, will examine how Muslims actually live their lives in accordance with their beliefs and the teachings of their faith and its leaders. Members of the House, I will set out during my speech the incompatibility of Islam with the values of religious tolerance and pluralism that underpin our society. I will then set out how Islam is more widely irreconcilable with the fundamental principles of Western liberal democratic society. And I will end with a call to action. This discussion should not be as fraught or as, well, frankly, you can hear it, as protested as it has been. And fundamentally, the West must move back to its fundamentally liberal roots and accept that no culture, no religion, no belief may not be subject to the scrutiny of reason and virtue. But before that, Mr. Chair, it is my obligation to introduce speakers on side opposition to this Honourable House. In the Union, we have a tradition of introducing the opposition speakers via roast. Given, however, it's the last week of term, and I'm feeling in a very, unlike the protesters tonight, constructive mood, I thought I'd say some thank yous. Firstly, you will hear from Aisha Khan Aziz, the Union's Chief Negotiations Officer.
All right, we're not going to do these thank yous. That's very kind of him, but we're on a timeline here.
Tireless defender of both this debate and...
All right, I'm going to fast forward this young man. He made a nice introduction. I think it's the intro to the thing about basically Islam is the right to be suspicious.
The system includes a system of taxation called, and I'm aware I'm going to butcher this, but
I thought he was thanking people.
Religions do.
All right.
I'm sure after her term, she'll enjoy a safe backstop in Reform UK.
Right.
Mr. Chair, Madam President, these are your guests, and they are most welcome. Debates about exclusivism are familiar to any student of philosophy. Islam, as many religions do, has a doctrine that is the final revelation of truth, and that all of her revelation is either not divine, not final, or simply wrong. This is unusual. But Islam presents a unique challenge to the secular liberal order. While many belief systems engage in internal moral dialogue, Islam encompasses an overarching political and legal framework, referred to as Sharia, that makes explicit, actionable demands on the governance of the state. This system includes a system of taxation called, and I'm aware I'm going to butcher this, but jizya, whereby non-Muslims are, in Muslim lands, as envisaged by the Quran, required to pay a tax for the extension of freedom of belief and the right to autonomy of life. We talk a lot about how we should be tolerant, how we should be accepting of beliefs, and I'm sure that different presentations of Islamic law will be presented. When you examine concepts like the jizya or specific jurisprudence regarding apostasy, we need not trade quotes from scripture. We can debate the more essential tension between a political doctrine that legally categorizes citizens by their faith status and a Western liberal system that mandates equality under law regardless of belief. Take jizya. It is not fundamentally liberal, and is it not fundamentally liberal and Western to believe in discriminatory taxes against those of different faiths that are a requirement to be guaranteed the most basic of what we in the West would call human rights, such as the right to even light up. Feel free.
It's not discriminatory taxes.
Before the Muslim apologist goes on, let's just clarify what he's talking about, because he himself admitted he's not pronouncing it correctly. Jizya. It's okay. So he's talking about jizya. It's a funny word. Jizya from the Quran, and it's this tax. They call it a tax. It's basically tribute that non-Muslims, specifically Ahlul Kitab, that is people of the book, which are defined in Islamic jurisprudence primarily as Christians and Jews. Some say also Sabaeans, and it was also granted to others eventually. But anyway, it's Quran 9:29. Fight the people of the book until they pay tribute and feel themselves willingly subdued and humbled. Pay tribute with humility, feeling themselves subdued. So basically, they have to pay tribute, extra taxes, and also alongside with the jizya. So it's not just it's fiscal exploitation and extortion, but hand in hand with it, you also have to embrace your lot as a, at best, second-class citizen. So you have to embrace the fact that you don't have the same rights as Muslims, and the money that you're paying is just so we don't kill you. But now let's see what the apologist is going to say about jizya, because these are always fun.
That in the Islamic State, there's only one level of citizenship. Non-Muslims are the citizens. Muslims are the subjects of the state. We have obligations to the state that non-Muslims are not subject to. And if you go to Pakistan, for example, they have some aspects of Islamic law there. In the constitution, Muslims are not allowed to drink alcohol, but Pakistani Christians are actually allowed to drink alcohol and follow their own practices. So if anything, an Islamic state is more oppressive to Muslims than it is to non-Muslims.
Oh, well, wow. Okay, I agree with that. An Islamic State is more oppressive to Muslims. But here's the distinction. So he's saying, you know, in an Islamic state, the jizya, that's required of the Christians. But you know what? Actually, being a Muslim, there's even greater requirements put upon you by the state. For example, he gave the alcohol thing. Well, here's the difference, Mr. Muslim. You as a Muslim believe that. You accept that. You should actually, the state is doing what you yourself believe. Are you not a Muslim? Does not Islam command you not to drink alcohol? So how is the state being draconian with you, for example? Isn't that your own belief? But the non-Muslim, whose land you conquered, and now you're extorting money out of, yeah, he doesn't believe in your religion. He doesn't believe in your Sharia. Okay, so why is he suffering? Moreover, maybe if that's the case, then Muslims in the West should start paying a special tax to practice their religion. How would that go? That'd be an interesting experiment, no? You know, if that's how Muslims treat non-Muslims in Islamic states, then why shouldn't Muslims pay a special tax? Maybe that's what God would want, right? I don't know. So anyway, that and actually the kind of jokes and the lies that they do about jizya, maybe there's some time, maybe it'll come up again, and we'll talk a little bit about jizya. But so his response makes absolutely no sense, which is, yeah, you know, Islam is even harder for us Muslims. I hear that all the time. Yeah, but that's what you believe. You believe this is the truth, and that's why you accept it. Non-Muslims whose land you stole don't believe that. So they are kind of innocent, no?
Is fundamentally there is a discrimination between Muslim and non-Muslims. This is but one example.
Yes.
Scholars may disagree on the interpretation of various verses of the Quran and hadiths, from, again, a quote, kill the polytheists wherever you find them in Surah 9:5, to, quote, whoever changes his religion, put him to death, in the words of the Prophet Muhammad in the hadiths. But with these verses, even if not literal instructions, go on.
In the surah that you mentioned, the verse of the sword, can you recite the verse that comes before it, and then also the verse that comes after it? And are you willing to accept that that verse was given in a very specific time regarding a very specific tribe that burned or prevented the treaty that they can sign with Muslims, that is not a universal command upon all Muslims?
I think I'm about to get that. But only these verses, even
she threw the poor guy off. She's basically saying, hey, what about this verse before it and what about the verse after it? And that verse was revealed in a very specific context, etc. What's your point? You're not the ulama, young lady. There's a consensus that verse has abrogated over 100 verses. It's not what this guy is saying or what you're saying or what I'm saying. This is the problem with these people, Anyway, let's see how he answers.
If not literal instructions, even if not divine law, tell you something about the fundamental difference between Islam and other faiths. Islam is a totalizing religion. Non-believers are expected to convert or render inferior, not in the divine realm above, but here on earth. Polytheists, apostates, and all of the other deserving exclusion or worse. This brings me quite nicely to my second point. Ultimately, I could list countless examples of how Muslim-majority countries treat non-believers, how it is potentially lethal in countries like Syria to be a Jew or religious minority, how Iran hangs homosexuals, how countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia subjugate women through passport controls moderated by male guardianship schemes. But it'd be the same old, tired criticism. I want us to think about this differently and honestly. We can put this down to, as I'm sure side proposition will, local anomalies or distorted interpretations. Yet nearly 80% of the world's Muslim population live in states where these frameworks are not just abstract theory, but the law of the land. We must grapple with this reality. We can observe the outcome of this doctrine, where it is empowered to govern through the very same people who profess its teachings. If that practical truth is the standard of governance in the vast majority of the Muslim world, why should we, as a liberal society, treat the expansion of that system as if the outcome would be any different? Most concerningly, political Islam, once dismissed as being crazy and as fringe as the conspiracy of the Epstein files, is now being normalized as a policy end by an insurgent Green Party. The idea of Islam as a political ideology certainly isn't new, but the open pursuit of it by parliamentary hopefuls, moving from the streets to the hall of government, should concern anyone who values our secular democracy. When the state goal of a movement is to institutionalize its legal framework, to replace existing statutes with an alternative code, we are no longer discussing a religion with a political competitor. Finally, I wouldn't leave you a point. It is my choice as it is your choice to be suspicious of Islam or not. But let's not act like we really treat it that way. The West has got into this unfortunate habit of thinking tolerance means protection, avoidance of scrutiny, and avoidance of uncomfortable conversations. To be clear, faith is a choice. I have faith. I'm certainly not an atheist. But I expect, and nor should anyone expect, any accommodation, nor safe space. The freedom for faith incurs the liability of criticism. If truly we shouldn't be suspicious of Islam, then why the visceral backlash that you can hear right now to this debate? Why do more Muslims not see this debate how our president does? Look at the 5 Pillars poll as an example of how the Muslim world sees this very important debate. What about how the honourable gentleman sitting right there sees it as an opportunity to defend his religion? The UK, feel free.
The initial 5 Pillars polls put it 66% of Muslims were supportive of this debate going through.
And then they found out the speakers and they changed it. The UK...
They knew about Tommy.
They knew about Tommy, and that was one side. The UK regards, quote, religion or belief as a protected characteristic. But no belief...
So did you catch that? Just for the record, 66%, 2/3 of Muslims were okay with this debate, with some caveats, I think. Okay, so what about the other third? That's a big chunk, isn't it? In England or in Britain, I don't know, whatever millions you have. So, several millions were completely against that debate. Nothing to say about that. That's not supposed to be concerning. That shouldn't raise suspicions. And then the other 2/3 who are okay with the debate, I mean, what does that necessarily even mean? Obviously, maybe they're smart enough to realize that when you say no to the debate, you've just exposed yourself as having lost the debate. These people. All right, let's go.
Should be protected from inquiry. You should have the freedom to practice. I should have the freedom to criticize, to scrutinize, or in fact condemn. Religions are systems of propositions, political, philosophical, personal, and ultimately ontological. One can certainly be suspicious of Islam, and I hate to say you are allowed. It's not bigotry, it's not far right. How can a system of belief that demands the discrimination of apostates be compatible with a secular order based on equality and rights? How can a religious order that imposes subjugation as morality be compatible with a liberal democratic order? Members of the House, if you, like me, can't answer those questions, then vote for this motion. Go on.
On every matter of British values proposed last year, democracy, equality before the law, loyalty to this country, opposition to bigotry, British Muslims scored higher than the British average. Will the Speaker concede that the community he is asking us to be suspicious of is holding the line on the values he claims to defend?
I would direct the President to other polls, including the polls about whether October 7th actually happened, the polls about whether 9/11 was staged by the American government, the polls about the basics of British values, democracy, freedom, and I'll leave it there because I'd already finished my speech.
I thank the honourable gentleman for opening the debate for the proposition, and I call upon Aisha Khan Aziz to open the debate for the opposition.
This should get good.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a history student. I love digging up the past, though not as much as some people who have studied every terrorist attack since 9/11 and yet somehow missed the 12 centuries of Islamic history that came before. But since we are doing history, let me give you Cato the Elder, since the West likes rooting itself in its Greco-Roman traditions.
All right, I got to stop it right now. You have to pay attention to what she just said, which is basically, I'm a student of history, so am I. And people keep talking about Muslims and terrorism in the now. But what about the other 12 centuries of peace and tolerance and golden ages and whatnot, right? Well, I have a thing or two to say about that, or actually 2 or 3 books about that. But let's let her finish.
Ended every speech in the Roman Senate on grain prices or foreign policy with the same line: Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. He never argued it or proved it, he just repeated it, incessantly and relentlessly, until the Senate felt it in their bones, until Carthage felt inevitable. Eventually they went and burned it to the ground and salted the earth so nothing would grow again. We do not have to go back 2,000 years to see how this ends. We can look at simply last week in Belfast. A stabbing on a street left a man fighting for his life at the hands of a Sudanese refugee here on a legal residence permit. Within 48 hours, mobs were going from door to door looking for them. 27 people were made homeless overnight. A Ukrainian family burnt out. Muslim parents who were asking their white neighbors to keep their children safe while they stayed in their houses and waited.
Real quick about the Sudanese thing. So the problem with the Sudanese Belfast thing is not that some Muslim from Sudan decided to attack a Irishman and try to decapitate him, as we all saw. The problem is that people got angry about it because it was the millionth time that sort of thing has happened. Not necessarily decapitation; those are relatively rare, but they happen. Lee Bixley, the British soldier in London, I think 2012. In France, it's happened, and of course, there's the constant stabbing. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe if Muslims didn't do that, the people wouldn't riot and get angry. Ever think of that? Interesting, huh? All right. As she was. Continue.
For the inferno to come. A 2-month-old baby was pulled from a burning house by firefighters. Northern Ireland's Justice Minister said it plainly. Bad faith actors who could not have found Belfast on a map a week earlier were deliberately stoking people onto the streets, and that is the absolute definition of racism. But before I make that case in full, let me acknowledge the...
I was waiting for that word. I was waiting for racism and Islamophobia. Okay. So a black man tries to be a white man, and the problem is white racism. Got it? All right. Oh, God.
Spent in front of me tonight. Oliver JL, I begin with you. You dropped out of your GDL course to spend more time unemployed at the Oxford Union. And given how many times a Muslim candidate has stood between you and the position you actually wanted here in the Union, perhaps tonight's motion...
I don't even know what's going on.
Perhaps tonight's motion is less about the West's relationship with Islam and more about yours. Stephen Yaxley Lennon, known to his hooligans as Tommy Robinson. Stephen, there is a crowd outside...
Before, she's obviously segueing here, so I have to make some comments. Yeah. So the problem, according to her, is something happens which isn't worth talking about. Muslims stab, kill, try to behead people, sometimes do behead people. There you got the rape gang thing going on. You got terrorism. We can talk about something like the persecution of Christians all around the Islamic world, et cetera, et cetera. But the real problem is that people are noticing and getting angry because they're racist. Are you following her logic? Need I really try to unpack it any more than that? I don't think I will. Not worth it. So let's continue. She looks really annoying too, now that she's paused and I'm looking at her.
Rioting against you tonight, and without the protection and generosity of a Muslim Palestinian president and a mostly South Asian executive committee, you would be quite literally cooked.
So this is the one part that I did see because that's what everyone kept sending to me. I'm sure maybe you have too. So she just threatened Tommy Robinson, who's sitting there, by basically saying, let me rewind it again because I kind of missed it myself.
Committee, you would be quite literally cooked. Perhaps tonight's motion is less about the West's relationship with Islam and more about yours. Stephen Yaxley Lennon, known to his hooligans as Tommy Robinson. Stephen, there is a crowd outside rioting against you tonight, and without the protection and generosity of a Muslim Palestinian president and a mostly South Asian executive committee, you would be quite literally cooked.
All right. And so this is the only aspect that I've actually looked a little bit in. And clearly what she's saying to him is that if it wasn't for the generosity of her and the other more, I guess, civilized Muslims who are sitting in there, the savage Muslims outside rioting would cook him, right? So yeah, that's clearly a threat, but I've understood that somehow he apologized to her. I don't know what that's about, but I know what my ears are hearing, and I'm familiar enough with Muslim logic to understand exactly what she's trying to convey to him, which is basically, yeah, look how great we are and our generosity, because if we left you to our more zealous co-religionists out there, you'd be cooked. First of all, how is that generosity on your part? I thought it's because there's still some semblance of law in England. Maybe isn't that why he's not going to be cooked? Because there should be some law and security and police action against a mob that wants to kill a man because he wants to speak the truth. Or so I don't understand how she sees it as it's our generosity and our goodness that we're keeping them at bay. And it's very reminiscent of the classic good cop, bad cop routine, right? Good moderate Muslim, or we, whoever are in that at this Oxford Union debate. And you look how good we are, because if you really want to deal with them, they'll kill you. So you better cooperate with us. How do you people put up with this? I don't blame them. I don't blame her for being so cheeky. Yeah, you put up with it, right? I wrote an article a long, long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. I call it the schoolyard bully. And I basically describe Islam as a schoolyard bully. What does a bully do? He tests you, he pushes you, and the more you give in, what does he do? He pushes you more and slaps you around more, okay? Until you give him a punch in the nose, and then at which point he becomes your best friend. So I don't this character, this kind of behavior that you're seeing, I don't blame her at all. I don't blame her for thinking it's that she and other moderate Muslims, thanks to their great generosity, you're not being killed, because that's how she's thinking about it. But that's what happens when you keep giving in to bullies. I mean, honestly, this entire debate is a sort of capitulation in a way. The fact that we have to debate if we can even be suspicious, not that Islam is suspicious and should be as such treated accordingly, but can we even treat it as suspicious? Anyway, let's carry on.
Then Lawrence Fox, actor, politician. However, I think his most memorable role might be the ex-husband of Doctor Who's Rose Tyler, founder of the Reclaim Party, which at the last general election reclaimed approximately 0.02% of the British vote. Also a former GB News presenter, former because GB News let him go, which, if you know anything about GB News, says something quite specific about the threshold. Finally, Jonathan Sacradotti, a core memory of my Michaelmas 2024 Oxford Union experience. However, you wrote an article in The Spectator merely 2 days ago. There you insist sharing a panel with Stephen Yaxley Lennon is not a reflection on you, and that guilt by association is beneath serious argument, only to spend the rest of the piece asking Muslims to wear the guilt of a minority who share nothing with them but a faith. You cannot demand that logic for yourself, Jonathan, and deny it to everyone else in the room.
With information. My argument was with the ideology of Islam, not with individual Muslims.
I read the article and it was a bit very self-apologetic about speaking here tonight. Mr. Chair, these are Madam Speaker's guests, and in the spirit of free speech, they are most welcome.
How magnanimous of her.
The proposition's argument is seductive. It says, look at the threat, look at the attacks. Suspicion is just and prudence. I do not need to deny that Islamist terrorism or an Islamist threat is real. I need to show you that collective suspicion of Islam is irrational, counterproductive, and morally catastrophic. So let us be inductive. Let us look at what that suspicion actually produces. After 9/11, the West treated Islam as a civilizational enemy and called that suspicion prudence. The result was not safety. It was Abu Ghraib, it was Ottoman Bey, men who were held for decades without charge, men like Ahmed Rabbani, a taxi driver from Karachi, sold to the Americans for $5,000 for...
Yes, this woman is so annoying, every aspect of her. But because I believe in freedom of speech and giving everyone we will let her continue her nonsense.
They thought he was someone else. 20 years in a cage and he never once was charged. His son Jawad grew up on a 15-minute phone call a year, a father who would only say he is in jail. At 13, Jawad went on the dark web to watch his father's torture videos. For years, he believed his father must have deserved it because, in his words, you don't torture anyone for no reason. He did not meet his father until 2023. A grown man meeting a stranger at an airport because suspicion took his father before he was even born. That is what suspicion produces. Not security, but the very monster it claims to defend against, and a childhood stolen from a boy who committed no crime either. When it is not states, but ordinary people who act on it, the ledger is just as damning. 2 genocides of Muslims in 30 years, Bosnia in 1995, Myanmar in 2017, a pogrom in Delhi in 2020, all fed by the same elemental claim that the proposition is making tonight, that Muslims are foreign, violent, a threat by nature rather than by individual acts. The motion, at its core, is Samuel Huntington's argument, which is the clash of civilizations, Islam and the West, placed as mortal enemies in a struggle that only one side can win. Published in 1993, it has shaped Western policy for 30 years. So let us test it against the evidence. The evidence, they say, is ISIS, Palmyra, the Bamia Buddhas. Look, here is the clash. Here is...
Sorry, the evidence is 1,200 years of unwavering jihad, which I will unpack a little bit. ISIS and these groups are just, just the little topping on the cake, if that, or the tip of the iceberg.
Why suspicion is rational. All they do is destroy. So let me take them to Jerusalem. In the Al-Aqsa complex, which is the third holy site in Islam, there are Gothic rose windows. Crusader stonework preserved by Muslim custodians for 8 centuries. Salahuddin Ayyubi took Jerusalem in 1187 and left the Christian stonework standing. That is not a clash of civilizations.
Wow. Did you hear that? Saladin took Al-Aqsa and he left some stones of the Christians, some crosses or whatever, because he's tolerant. He also stole the true cross, whipped it, dragged it upside down in the dirt. The true cross would be the cross that Christians believed was where Jesus was crucified, and it was kept the most sacred relic, essentially. He stole it, degraded it, desecrated it, mocked it. And that's just one thing. Not to mention, he beheaded the Knights of the Temple and the Hospital because they would not embrace Islam. And anyway, how do you even know that the crosses that he left, it's even intentional? Maybe they just didn't even care. They didn't notice it. I mean, like literally, that's your excuse. This is how Islam is tolerant, not the 12 centuries of jihad and mass slaughter of people. But, oh, look, there's a building. And by the way, what's Islam? Why is Islam in Jerusalem in the first place? When Islam came a-knocking in the 7th century, Jerusalem was Christian, following, Constantine and the erection of so many holy sites, including the Holy Sepulchre. So then Islam conquered it, actually, and built Al-Aqsa, and they made sure to put all these insulting verses on the Dome of the Rock facing the Holy Sepulchre, saying basically, Allah does not have sons. He neither is born or it's late. Okay, he neither gives birth. He doesn't have descendants, nor is he born. They're talking about the Trinity, Jesus, and so forth. Anyway, I mean, it's funny because they're taking this argument that the West is cherry picking. I'm sorry, no. The West has mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence. Check out my books, Sword and Scimitar, especially Defenders of the West, Two Swords of Christ, which I would show you, except they're right here underneath my computer, serving as a table to lift it up. And those books make very clear that it's a very, very, very long, violent pattern. And what we're seeing today is actually just the reflection of it. A very minor form, in fact. Anyway, let's let her carry on.
I'm talking about Jerusalem. The evidence... and denied. The Bamia, when the Taliban first proposed destroying Buddhas, scholars from Al-Azhar University in Cairo flew to Kandahar to argue against it on theological grounds. Hazara Muslims took up arms to protect them. That tradition tried harder to save those statues than the West ever did. Which brings me to Palmyra. The man who died trying to save it was an 81-year-old Muslim man.
What about when Muslims destroyed the Holy Sepulchre? I was just talking about it, which is the most important sanctuary in Christendom, built during Constantine's time, over the place where Jesus was tried and crucified, buried, resurrected. Muslims actually habitually attacked it, and in 1009 they completely destroyed it, pulverized it, under the Egyptian Caliph Hakim Ba'amr Allah. At the same time, they also destroyed and desecrated 30,000 churches and synagogues in the greater Middle East area. What about that? Does that not come into your calculus, young lady?
For a month and beheaded for refusing to talk. So who is Islamist violence actually killing? Not the West. It's Muslims. 91% of everyone killed by Islamist terrorism is Muslim.
I've heard that, and maybe it's true, but how does that get Islam off the hook? It's almost like the other fellow saying, this dhimmi jizya tax, we as Muslims suffer even more because there's even more rules on us. Okay, well, that's your problem. That's your religion. You've accepted it. And here she's saying, oh, Muslims suffer more. Well, again, yeah, it's your problem. That's your religion. Maybe you should abrogate it or something.
Has killed 69,000 people, ISIS 58,000, Boko Haram 25,000 people, all of them nearly Muslim, killed by men who called themselves the only true Muslims on earth. For 20 years, the West has pointed at the body count and blamed the...
But do you know, you've always had men like that, men who say we're the true Muslims and you're not. This goes all the way back to the times of Muhammad. What was that sect that branched out very early? Man, it's like, just so you know, it's past 10 for me p.m. here. My brain's a little spent, but I'll look it up. Anyway, but Muslims have always been saying this is true Islam. So the Muslims that she's talking about who were killed by Boko Haram and by terrorist groups, it's because the terrorists, the Muslims, say they're not real Muslims. You know why? Because they live interspersed with Christians and they sometimes get along with them. So that means they're infidels. In the writings of Al-Qaeda, when they talked about 9/11 and how, well, what if a Muslim died if you attack indiscriminately, they actually cited hadith by Muhammad where he was attacking with catapults and also engaged in night attacks and raids. And when people said, what about the women and children? He said, they are from among them. They're from among the infidels. So what? So it's the same logic over and over. But anyway, it's your religion. They're the ones who are doing this. What about the very fact that all the terrorists who are killing everyone are Muslims? And we don't have the Christians, right? We don't have the Buddhists running around. And we're not supposed to be suspicious, really? Ugh.
This was suspicion. Huntington told governments that they were not engaged, they were in a civilizational war. They believed him.
About Huntington, this is Samuel Huntington. He wrote a book, Political Scientist, Clash of Civilizations. I read it back in the day, late 90s. And his argument is that, we have civilizations and there's a clash. And the greatest clasher was Islam. And he very famously said, the borders of Islam are bloody and their innards too. That was that was also the second part of that sentence, which people don't remember. They remember the first part, which is the borders of Islam are bloody. What does he mean? He means that wherever Muslims are abutted or neighboring non-Muslims, there's violence and warfare. The most notable and obvious example is Israel and its Arab or Islamic neighbors. That's the most obvious, but it's actually everywhere. So you can go to Nigeria. All the people there are blacks, they're Nigerians, and there's a genocide against one group, the Christians. They look like the other ones, they speak like them, but yeah, they're infidels. And so you can argue there's a border. The north of Nigeria is primarily, it's more Muslim majority, but there's a constant warfare. Two Christians or one Christian every 2 hours is basically slaughtered in Nigeria. So yeah, the Clash of Civilization thesis by Samuel Huntington is not much of a thesis. It's common sense. It's an observation of patterns which involve Islam and non-Muslims who live near them. And here she's going off as if it's this conspiracy. It was made up. There's no real thing, and etc.
In fighting that war, they generated precisely the enemy his thesis required. Yes?
Are you suggesting that Islamic death meted out to other Muslims should not make people in the West suspicious because
Exactly.
they care about Islam killing its own people?
I think primarily the West's argument towards criticism of Muslims is to do with themselves, as opposed to how they treat other Muslims. I don't think that the footing in which we treat other Muslims versus Westerners is equal. That is the paradox of the modern culture war, actually. Offended by everything, shamed by nothing. They take issue with the women on a headscarf on a bus and feel no shame about the wars we exported or the terrorist regimes we bankrolled. The sensibility that finds Islam offensive cannot locate its own reflection in history. And trust me, the West has plenty of history to locate. The Inquisition, colonialism, slavery, the internment of Japanese Americans for Carthyism. Every generation has had its Carthage, a group cast as a civilizational threat. Every generation told itself it was being reasonable, and every generation was wrong. So let us be clear about Western values. The West does not have a settled, unified set of values against which Islam can be measured and found wanting. It is a contested, unresolved project and so is Islam, and so is every intellectual tradition. The question is not whether one perfect civilization can judge another and find it deficient, denied, but whether two imperfect contested traditions can coexist, and that is not answered by one of them claiming the right to treat the other as inherently suspect. I agree that Western values are worth defending, so completely that I will show you what they look like when I actually live them. Western critical thinking means I can read a scholar's commentary on a Quranic verse and decide that he might be right or wrong. It means I can hold up my faith to scrutiny without it shattering.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares that you as a Muslimah can grab the Quran and tell yourself what it is, what it's saying, what the verse says. I don't care, because what I care about is how Islam is actually taught amongst real Muslims, right? And real Muslims don't just grab the Quran and say, oh, well, this is saying this to me. That's kind of a modern Western Christian thing. Real Christians didn't do that either, actually, historically. So we can say maybe the Western kind of disease is to make people think, oh, it's whatever it says and whatever I want it to believe. Fine. So she can say that, she can believe that, good for her. But that doesn't interest me, because I'm actually more interested in those who take their religion seriously and try to follow it the way it's understood historically and doctrinally. Because I hear this all the time. Well, when I read it, that's not what it tells me. I don't care at all.
Faith that cannot survive a question probably deserves to be questioned, am I right? But the proposition's argument is not critical thinking should be universal. It is that the West has a right to be suspicious of me. Before I even open my mouth, before I demonstrate anything at all, suspicious of who I am and also what I eat, ironically. MI5's own researchers have
This
said
is very interesting what she said. Ultimately, she's saying the problem is, if you're suspicious of Islam, you're going to be suspicious of me as a Muslim, right? And yes, yeah, people will be suspicious of you. But why shouldn't they? I always hear this argument, like, well, what about there's innocent Muslims? We're not all terrorists. We don't all follow it. I agree. I get it. But why is the burden of proof on me? Okay, I've given these analogies so many different times where I've said before, imagine a jar with 100 candies and one or two of them are poison, right? Would you take it and give it to your kid and say, well, it's only one or two. Come on, chances are you'll be fine. No, you won't. You'll say, I'm not dealing with this at all because there's a risk. Now, we already know that within Islam, there's a risk, because in every single Western country that has Muslim populations, you get terrorism. Whether it's 1%, 5%, 10%, doesn't matter. It's there. So by virtue of the fact that it is there, it does happen. I'm not interested if it's 1%, 10%, 0.01%. It's there. And so the burden of proof is on you, not me. Because you're part of that religion, I can't help but doubt you and be suspicious. Otherwise, I'm taking a risk. And why should I take a risk for my loved ones, for my nation, for my civilization, for my faith? Why should I be the one and not you? So that's the problem. Yes, I agree. There are innocent Muslims because they're born into the religion and they're not necessarily part of it. But that's ultimately not our problem. I don't want to take that risk. We know there's a problem within that religion, and it's hard to tell who is aligned with it and who's not least due to the doctrines of deceptions such as taqiyya. All right, let's let her continue.
Have said this themselves. When communities feel pre-convicted, they disengage from the institutions that could intercept real threats. I'm trying to get through my speech. Legitimized suspicion does not make us safer. It makes the people we need on side feel like enemies. One more thing about Western values. The proposition speaks of a Judeo-Christian tradition under threat from Islam. That phrase was coined in the 1930s in America to fight fascism, built against exclusion. Then the Cold War came and it was repurposed as a banner against godless communism, because nothing says rugged Western freedom quite like reminding the Soviets to go to church. Now it has changed target again. No longer Jewish people are written out of the West, but the Muslim person. It is the same machinery, the same sentence structure, the same act of drawing a line around who counts as one of us, just pointed at different people. Islamophobia has become one of the last socially acceptable forms of bigotry in British public life, and the proposition wants to give that bigotry a mandate. My grandfather came to this country in the 1950s. He did not arrive suspicious. He arrived with the particular stubborn hope of someone who believed Britain meant what it had said. He spent his life proving he belonged here, brick by brick, year by year. He even gave up his name, Abdul Aziz, for one that would open more doors. We gave this country our blood to enrich it. That proposition is asking you to tell him that was never going to be enough. Staging suspicion of Islam.
You got that? You got that, Brits? Pakistanis who come there are being altruistic. They gave their blood for you. Great.
Rigor. It is the same Islamophobia that keeps people like Stephen Yaxley Lennon and Lawrence Fox trafficking. And it is a disgrace. I'm about to finish my piece. It is a disgrace that Muslims should have to keep performing their humanity to earn belief. I say that is not Western values. That is Western failure. That is a Western disgrace. And this House is better than that. I urge you all to vote against the motion tonight. Thank you.
All right. Now that was really shoddy stuff. I hope you're still there and you're able to tolerate this. I mean, there is some element to it, which I'm kind of enjoying at this point. But, you know, I made many interjections right there. But in short, if that was meant to be the great defense, yeah, I'm not impressed. Okay. She briefly earlier on, and I mentioned it, she talked about history. What about the history of Islam? Yeah, it's actually worse than this. 12 centuries of nothing but jihad. Does she not know that virtually every nation that is today Islamic was violently conquered and was not Islamic originally? Does she not know that the populace were told you better convert or die or pay tribute? And most of them were poor and didn't want to pay tribute and keep living in perpetuity as second-class citizens. So they became Muslims. That's the story of her ancestors. Does she not know that after that massive conquest of the Christian West alone, 3/4 of Christian territory was permanently conquered? All of North Africa, all of the Middle East, Asia Minor, Turkey, the Balkans, all the way up to Vienna temporarily, the Mediterranean islands temporarily for centuries, Spain for centuries, all the way up into France, and all the slave raids that left no part of Europe untouched, went even to Iceland, or the fact that the United States of America's first war as a nation was with Muslim slavers who were quoting Quran 9:5 to Thomas Jefferson and saying, our Quran tells us to lay in wait and ambush for you and enslave you, and our prophet says so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's a pretty grim history that definitely validates the clash of civilizations thesis. And I also find it very ironic, if you're familiar with Edward Gibbon, the 18th century historian, British historian who wrote The Fall of the Roman Empire, the massive 2-volume tome, etc. He makes an interesting observation, which is rather pertinent right now, which is that if Charles Martel had not stopped the Muslims, he says, in the year 732 at the Battle of Tours in France, he's basically saying, well, the agenda was to keep conquering because the Muslims had conquered all of North Africa, then they entered Spain, now they were in France, and from the east they had conquered and were trying to get into Constantinople. And basically he makes this line, which is that had Charles Martel not done this, here in Oxford we could be hearing the muazzin singing praises to Allah. And lo and behold, we are. And it didn't require conquest through arms. It just required conquest through stupidity and naivety and gullibility of Western people, right? Because here's Oxford, and here you have lie after lie being spouted out, and the West, Europeans can't. They're trying so hard to see if they have the right to be suspicious of their conquerors. So yeah, that's what happens. Are you guys still with me? Shall we continue? Yeah, we still have some time. A lot of you are. You know what? Let's take some super chats, and then we will continue, at least for a time. Hello, new members. Speedrunner, I was half expecting the op to bring up Dehya and Al-Zut to refute Islam's intolerance toward gays. Oh well, maybe next time. Oh yeah. But that's actually a pro-gay thing, isn't it? Pop the kettle on, love. Hi Ray, when are you going on your next historic tour? Go to Rhodes or Cyprus? You know, Rhodes is actually on my list, and I might do that because of the nights of the hospital. But I will keep you posted, and maybe you've seen my little clips and whatnot. I've been doing a little traveling. I'm trying to create little video documentaries, and I have some good ones coming up. One was sadly compromised, and it dealt with Vlad the Impaler, or at least a portion of it, but we will see how I can salvage it. But the others are really good, I hope. We still have, I did a thing with John Hunyadi and others. But yeah, as time goes, hopefully next week I'll release one of them. Thanks for asking. And yeah, Rhodes is a good idea. Might do Malta too. Pop the kettle on love. Entertaining debate on Dan Wooten, outspoken. Nureya Khan, ex-Muslim lady, winding up an Islamic center. I-man, priceless. Yeah, this stuff is... all right. R.I., please comment on Jacob R.M.'s speech. He praised Christ and Christianity while completely making an incoherent point that didn't even make any sense. All right, I will put that on my list. Shakespeare wannabe. If you don't have to talk about Islam all the time, what would you write about? Ancient Egypt? Me? I would. I'm ultimately. I'm very much interested in history, and I believe that the truth of everything is hidden in the past. And so I am doing that. I continue exploring historical themes that are very little known about and making connections that most people don't. And so, yeah, I would primarily continue writing history, and I actually hope to continue to branch out and continue writing about history and to move away now that I think I've almost exhausted Islam, and look into other topics. The Lady Dixon. Thank you so much, Ray, for all your hard work, and I appreciate your honesty in refusing to bend, especially these days. I love your books. Well, thank you very much, Lady Dixon. I appreciate it. Matt, God bless you. God bless you. Appreciate that. Thank you all for the well-wishing. And by the way, I try to read, all the comments on the YouTube videos, and I really appreciate all the kind things that you all say. I'm just always pressed for time. Trying to give you guys content. Amazing disgrace. Was the spread of Christianity in the Middle East done by force, or was it organic? The latter, organic. Did the Byzantine Empire enforce or just defend Christianity and Christian nations? Enforce? I mean, yeah, as I was indicating earlier, it primarily did defend Christian nations, but these historically Christian nations were Christian, which means it's not that they had blasphemy laws. Well, I mean, I don't know if you'd want to run around and, curse Christ publicly. There might be some repercussions, actually. But they didn't have a Sharia law. Actually, modern Western law is, believe it or not, based on Christian law, much of it. The problem is people don't realize that, and that's why it can't be applied to non-Christians. Secularists, atheists, they think all this stuff that they've inherited, or Western law, they think it's just neutral, that they just came up with it and everyone's going to get it, human rights, tolerance, that's just natural. Well, it's not. And that's why it doesn't work in other civilizations. Anthony Unplugged. Since starting my political commentary channel earlier this year, Raymond, America and other countries willingly integrating Islam into their Western societies is insane. I've learned so much from your vids. Thank you. Well, thank you. And yes, it is insane, but there it is. Amazing disgrace. I wish you were at this debate, Raymond. I wish I wasn't. I'm glad I wasn't. I get invited often to these sorts of things, but I'm not. I'm being facetious. I'm not saying this one per se or anything like that, but I just think the time for debate's over. Actually, I think the fact that people are still debating is part of the problem. Like we're this culture that's just stuck in talking and can never move beyond that, and we think we're so brave because we're debating if we can be suspicious. The assassin of the gray. When I am weaker than you, I ask you for freedom because that is according to your principles. When I am stronger than you, I take away your freedom because that is according to my principles. Frank Herbert. Yeah, Frank Herbert, I think, wrote Dune, and Frank Herbert was very much influenced by Islam and jihad. The characters that he writes about are essentially Muslims and Arabs and Bedouins, and he even uses the word holy war and jihad. And yeah, that's exactly the Muslim modus operandi. Okay, all you have to do is look, how do Muslims treat non-Muslims today? Any idea? Go to a Muslim country and actually try to ascertain and see how non-Muslims live. Do they have equality? No, not at all. Even if it's on paper. Egypt, in Egypt, the Constitution, Article 2 says Sharia is a principal source of legislation. But at the same time, it says there's no discrimination and Christians and Muslims and Jews are all equal, et cetera, et cetera. In the real world, no, that's not the case. And here's a fun fact you may not know. In a lot of these countries, Egypt, Pakistan, do you know on your ID, it has to say your religion? If you're a Christian, it has to say you're a Christian, Muslim. Why is that? Why does the government care what your religion is? Think about that for a moment. Imagine if in the West, Europe, United States, your ID had to indicate your religion. What would that tell you? Zut Hassan. Your opinion on movies and video games trying to be historically accurate, but they add a black samurai, lesbian sumo wrestler, and a trans gladiator. Well, yeah, that's just the way. That's how it is now. It's so off-putting how everything is. You got to ruin it that way. All right. Thanks for the questions. Let's continue. Let's see how much we can get through today. But this seems like a decent endeavor. I think we're all having a little fun here. Let's carry on.
I thank the Honourable Lady for opening the case for the opposition, and I now call upon Mr. Tommy Robinson to advance the case for the proposition.
First of all, I'd like to say I'd much rather be watching the England game than in here tonight. I've simply come here because of the commitment to free speech that Arwa had for this event. I know you have totally opposite views to me, but I know that people may step into the field of inviting me somewhere without realising what it's going to face. So I'm fully aware of the backlash you would have faced, but I congratulate you on your defence of free speech, and that's the reason why I've come tonight. I'd also like to congratulate Aisha on her first great speech, and I'm sorry that your family aren't here today to have watched that, but it wasn't my supporters that attacked them outside. It's not my supporters who are causing a rabble or smashing the place up and attacking police officers. It's not supporters on our side of the debate either. It's supporters on your side of the debate who are out there causing mayhem. Yeah? So before talking about Islam, I'd love to believe what Jacob and the others on this panel believe, that we shouldn't be suspicious of Islam. Jacob, there's 480 Muslims who live in your constituency, 0.5%. You probably can't find a Muslim. There's 3 mosques, the main one being in Bath University. I'm from Luton Town. We have 80,000 Muslims, 45 mosques, 33% of the population. So I asked myself, why would a non-Muslim be telling any of us that we shouldn't be suspicious of Islam? Well, of course, Jacob does not have to live with the consequences of his own disastrous policy government of the Conservative Party and their policies, beliefs only the elite can afford to hold. So to Islam, first, should we, the West, be suspicious of it? I want to be clear what Islam is, because it's not what any of you say it is. It's not what I say it is. It's not what we wish it to be. And it's not what your friendly local imam or your taxi driver or Mr. Andalusia decides it is. Islam is defined in the Quran. Muslims that believe the Quran to be the word of Allah, written in an eternal book in heaven and revealed to Muhammad in the 7th century. And it's the Sunnah, the excellent pattern of behaviour or exalted standard of moral excellence as defined in the Hadiths, which record his sayings, actions and silent approvals or disapprovals of Muhammad, and in the biography. And the whole idea, by the way, is based on accepting that Muhammad is the final prophet, because the Quran says so, and the Quran is the word of God because Muhammad says so. So, seeking common ground. I'm not here for a fight, contrary to what everyone believes. Everyone thinks everywhere I go, I want to fight. I want to find some common ground. Finding common ground with Islam. Muhammad said to the Christians of Najah, come to a word that is just between us and you, that we worship none but Allah, and that we associated no partners with him. So Islam presents itself as religion that wants to seek common ground with others. Come to a word, Muhammad was saying, let's find some common ground. Nothing to be suspicious of there, right? But it's the no partners. That's the key. Islam says it wants common ground, but the common ground must be Islam. Christians must deny Jesus is the Son of God, a partner. But anyway, let's look for some common ground. Okay, that's what we want to find. I've seen how this works, Andrew, so I'll take as many questions as you want at the end. I'm just going to finish my speech. How many of you in here are gay? You don't actually need to put your hands up, okay? In the Quran, through the story of Lot, homosexuality is condemned, and 4 of the 5 major schools of Islamic law think it should be punishable by death. Maybe I'm going to finish my speech. In fact, 24 countries where Islam is the state religion have criminal penalties for homosexuality. 8 of them is punishable by death. So I wonder, maybe if you're gay, you might maybe be a little bit suspicious of this. That's in Afghanistan, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Yemen. They kill you for being gay. Who's protesting about this? When these countries, state legislators or governments visit our country, who protests? Oh, well, I'd just love to finish it.
Point of order has been raised. President.
As per discussions with previous speakers, we did agree that we would take points of information from fellow speaker, guests, and audience members. If you can respect that as part of a constructive debate, it would be very much appreciated.
Thank the President for that point of order. Mr. Robinson, I think the idea that the President's putting across is...
Hear the question first.
Take a question every now and then. Take a question every now and then, please. Thank you.
Can we at least agree killing people because they are...
Wait a minute. Wasn't the Muslim girl before him, she kept saying, like, she would deny questions? No.
Homosexuals is never okay. It was never okay then, and it's not okay now. Now, I'll have to listen right. I'll see how this works.
Where does it say in the Quran or the teaching of Prophet Muhammad that someone who is homosexual or gay should be executed?
You don't need to convince me, mate. You need to convince the 8 Islamic countries that are killing them, the people who are being thrown off rooftops. Go have your...
Here we go again. Where does it say, let's waste time and, show me the exact... well, maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't matter. What does Islamic Sharia law say? Because it's already been established. And it just so happens that based on the idea that, the Sodom and Gomorrah and how the Islamic rendering of Sodom and Gomorrah and the homosexuals and how they're killed is, hailstorm, rocks. This is why they've come up with the idea that you execute them by throwing them off a roof. That way they hit rocks, they hit stone, and they die. Okay, but again, look at the how they're trying to obfuscate and twist everything around. Show me the verse. Well, maybe there isn't a verse. You don't have to have a verse. You have to have, is it understood? Is it part of the Islamic teaching? And it is. Is he arguing otherwise? Really? Do you think that? And again, he probably would say, this Muslim, oh, well, that's not what I think, because if it's not in the verse, then I don't believe it. But that's what your religion teaches. And Tommy Robinson, to his credit, that's what he said, which is what I've been saying, which is it's not what you think, what I think. It's what Islam says. And Islam is pretty clear cut on these topics. Yes, the apostate is to be punished, including by death. Yes, the blasphemer is to be punished. Yes, jizya is a real thing. Yes, non-Muslims are not equal to Muslims. It doesn't matter if a person can at will pull out a verse. Sometimes there is no exact verse. Sometimes it's a hadith. Sometimes it's just the consensus, ijma' of the ulama. Okay, so these are the games that they play. Well, show me the verse. Where does it say? Nobody cares.
Hamas, go have your argument devices. You don't need to convince me. Now, please, if I can just finish. Again, let's talk about sex, okay? How many of you have had sex since you got here? I want to see your hands up. I knew that was coming, right? You see, the Quran prescribes 100 lashes for the male and the female involved in what Islam considers illegal sexual intercourse. That's the Quran 24:2. But Islamic scholars have gone all in on this issue, yeah? Not just lashing. All schools of Islamic law prescribe death by stoning if a person is married. And the Shia school, Jafari, prescribes 100 lashes before you're stoned to death. So maybe, if you think no one believes in this, barbaric stuff, in 2023, the head imam of the Green Lane Mosque, the head imam, you can watch this video, actually gives a seminar to his congregation on how we keep the modesty of the woman before we smash rocks at her head. So you see, she had to be buried up to a certain level to preserve her modesty.
Is what you were discussing not abuse of Islamic scripture, not actually what is discussed in the Islamic scripture. Give me examples from Islamic scripture in Islamic law, not cherry-picked examples that are taken out of context. Give me examples from the verses of the Quran that back up your arguments.
Here they go again. See, same exact argument. I want exact verses. Who says it's about verses? It's not about the verses. It's about what Islam is codified about. It's about Sharia, the Sharia law. And Sharia law is not necessarily about a verse. The killing of apostates, that does not trace back to a Quran verse. It traces to a hadith, which someone mentioned earlier, which is Muhammad says, he who leaves his religion, kill him. There's no Quran verse that says that. There's some Quran verses, because the Quran is so amorphous, but there's some verses that speak about apostates essentially being punished in hell. But there's nothing that says kill him. But yeah, it is part of Islamic law that you do punish the apostate, including with death, because of the hadith. So very disingenuous for people to say, well, show me the Quran verse. Yeah, that's it. It's so childish and it's amateurish, actually, to even try to bring the argument down to that level. But that's all they have.
The simple question is, should the gay person who was thrown off the rooftop have been suspicious? Should the lady buried into the ground having rocks smashed at her head, which is the law which I'll get to?
Does it matter what the Quran says when Muslims do not practice it? Does it matter when the Muslims who are professing exactly what you said are the ones who are saying?
Yep. Now, 25 countries where Islam...
I don't know what he said. Did he say, does it matter what the Quran says if Muslims aren't practicing it? I don't know if that's what he said, but yes, it matters. Because the Quran is what forms Islam, as well as the other usul al-fiqh. This is an important term you should understand. Usul al-fiqh in Arabic means the roots of knowledge or jurisprudence. They are not just the Quran. They are the Quran, they are the hadith, and then they are the ijma', consensus of the ulama, which I mentioned. And then the fourth one's more of a technique, which is qiyas, analogy. So they use analogy. So for example, the Quran doesn't ban vodka, but it bans wine. By the process of analogy, all of alcohol is banned, okay? So that is Islam. That is how we understand what Islam is. So if someone says, well, does it matter what it teaches if Muslims don't follow it? Well, yeah, it does, because we're talking about Islam, not about people who to this or that degree associate themselves with Islam. And if they're not following it, then I guess they're not really Muslims. It should be put to death as apostates, according to Islam.
The state religion have criminal penalties for sex outside of marriage. 9 of them is punishable by death. So again, no one needs to have this argument with me. You don't need to convince me, okay? You don't need to convince me. Again, who's protesting about this? Can we at least agree as a group? Can we look for some common ground with the Muslim community? Stoning people for having sex outside of marriage is never okay. It was never okay. It's not okay then, and it's not okay now.
Since Jewish law says the same thing,
I'm not here to talk about Jewish law.
Should we be suspicious of Jewish law equally? Will you be consistent, sir?
That's not the question we're here for. If you want to have that question debate, have it. Yeah? Can we at least agree with the Muslim community? Okay, in modern Britain, where you're preaching to what now 4 million Muslims, we can just put a line through the verses in the Quran. Yeah, the parts of Islam's sacred text that says these things are not okay. They're not practiced now. They weren't okay then, and they're not okay now. Can we meet in the middle somewhere and have you accept the verses in the Quran today?
Will you demand that Orthodox Jews put lines through the Tanakh? Will the Orthodox Jews put line through the Tanakh as you are requesting Muslims to do?
I think you're confused at which debate you're at, okay? And the motion of this debate. Now, let's turn to good old Muhammad, okay? According to Islam's sacred text, an exalted example of moral excellence. Well, in 2014, ISIS, again, because this is important, because they're following scripture, ISIS, when they captured Yazid...
Sorry? Ask any Muslim whether they believe ISIS is following Islamic scripture, and you will find that no Muslim agrees that they are actually Islamic.
Except the Muslims in the West who follow the directives of ISIS communiques to go and drive their cars and vehicular jihads and go crash to processions or buildings and come out and stab people. I think those Muslims believe in what ISIS is practicing through Islam. But more to the point, again, who cares? And first of all, it's actually, there was a poll a long time ago, if you looked at it, where a vast majority of Muslims around the world agreed with ISIS. I think it was a Pew poll. So I don't even know what she's saying. But once again, even if that was true, even if the majority of Muslims said ISIS is not a true reflection of Islam, so what? Is it or isn't it? Is the real question. I'm not interested in what people believe. People are wrong often. I have to tell you, the Muslim side here is even weaker than I thought. I expected a little more impressive sophistry.
Once again.
I'm sorry, Madam President.
Can I just finish
think the
my
point has
speech?
been made. You must allow the speaker to continue.
In 2014, ISIS executed captured Yazidi men and boys. And what they've done is they pulled their pants down. They surrendered. They pulled their pants down. Anyone who's had any pubic hair was shot in the head, and some of them had their heads cut off with knives. You can watch the videos if you want online, yeah? Okay? They were following the example of Muhammad, who, according to Islam's own sacred text, presided over the execution of up to 900 men and boys, which was the Jewish tribe who had surrendered, and any male prisoner who had pubic hair was executed. That is what the practice that the Muslims in 2014 were following. This is why scripture is important and why we must be suspicious. Now, consider the fact, I'll just finish, please. Consider the fact that there are no Jews, none, in any of the 26 countries where Islam is the state religion. Countries which once held thriving Jewish communities. This is not an accident, and there are precious few Christians in any of these Islamic countries either, that once had majority Christian populations. You see, one way or another, these countries are following the example of Muhammad. I will certainly expel the Jews and Christians. Excuse me, can I just finish? I will certainly expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslim. That's a quote of Muhammad, Sahih Muslim. Sahih being the authentic, considered most authentic hadith. Please, can I just finish?
On the point.
Sorry, you don't have to accept. No, it's not. Okay, so, of course, put your hands up if you think it's okay for a man older than most of your dads, say in their 50s, to marry someone in infant school, let's say 6 years old, and consummate that marriage, rape, when the little girl reaches 9. By the way, that's year 5 doing key stage 2. Doing key stage 2. No, please, because I know many of you gentlemen should have your hands up at this point, no? We're going to get onto it, but you agree that Muhammad was perfect, as we know. He married a 6-year-old, had sex with her when she was 9. We've previously had this discussion, Andalus. Do you think children should be suspicious of Islam who are studying key stage 2? Now, please, can I just finish? And of course, can I please finish?
Order.
Please let me finish. You can get on.
Speaker declined. Please let us continue.
And I must mention Quran 65:4, where God, debatable, God spells out the rules for divorcing prepubescent children. Okay? So let me read it. And for those who have no courses, not yet started your periods, who are still immature, their iddah, their waiting period, is 3 months. What has happened for a child to be married, and this is the Quran telling you what the rules are and obligations to divorce a child before they've started puberty. Yeah? Can we be suspicious on this question? Is this... No, please, can I finish then? And to be honest, I'm just here. I'm the extremist, apparently. Yeah? I'm the extremist for not wanting homosexuals thrown off rooftops, not wanting women buried in the ground, and not wanting children studying key stage 2 to be married and raped. So, of the 10 countries with the highest rates of child marriage, 7 of them are Islamic countries. There's no minimum age in Sudan, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, because there's no minimum age in Islam. But whatever the stated legal age for marriage is in some Muslim countries, forced marriage of young girls, often to much older men, is prevalent in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Yemen. I could go on and on. UNICEF data shows, for all of you ladies who care about women and children's rights, UNICEF data shows child brides are unlikely to finish education, more likely to believe wife beating is justified, and more likely to have experienced intimate part of violence. I'd just like to finish, please, guys, and I apologise. Can we at least agree? Executing prisoners of war, including young boys, carrying out ethnic cleansing of Jews and Christians from the lands, or marrying and having sex with a little child when Muhammad was 53 years old. Can we at least agree today? Muhammad was not and is not the perfect example for mankind, nor is he an exalted example of moral excellence. Quite the opposite, in fact. Because if we can't agree this, then the West is right to be suspicious of Islam. Because of what the sacred text says, because of how millions of Muslims interpret the sacred text, because of how Muhammad's life is held up as the perfect example, not back then, but now, for all Muslims to follow. That's the problem. They don't recognise any of the problems and see anything wrong which Muhammad done. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you care about gay rights, if you care about women's rights, if you care about children's rights, if you care about human rights, or if you care about free speech, I urge you to support this motion.
Okay, very good. I have little to comment. I am largely in agreement. What you just heard is what's called common sense and reality, and all that is needed in order to argue for a motion to just be suspicious of Islam. All right, let's continue.
I thank the honourable gentleman for advancing the case for the proposition, and I call upon Mr. McAdowd to continue the case for the opposition.
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to start by thanking Oxford Union for inviting me to speak here. I am truly honoured and I'm very grateful to be here. I never thought I'd be here. To be honest, I've met a new friend to be, Jacob Rees-Mogg. So, you know, this is, I've had a nice meal, some halal chicken, which I'm sure Tommy enjoyed.
Get on with it.
So I'm just thanking the, and Liam, of course, likes a bit of halal chicken now. So, I know you do, mate. So, I'll just take this opportunity to thank you guys. So the real question, I believe the first question was, is should the West be suspicious of Islam? Was that a question of the debate? You're nodding your head, so it must be. Right, so Tommy, wait, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm going to answer that. Tommy's been saying the same thing for 15 years and still has to read it.
Proven right.
Right,
Proven
yeah,
right.
no, but you still have to read it. So obviously you don't know your case that well. So
Point of order.
should the West be...
Proven right.
Yeah, right, gosh, go on, mate. So should the West be suspicious...
Point of order. Do you allow people to cut in without permission from the speaker?
I think we ask that speeches be heard in some courtesy, gentlemen. If the point of information is declined, then please simply allow the speaker to continue.
I don't mind taking questions.
Well, then, it is for the speaker to choose whether a point of information is accepted.
Sure.
With that, Mr. Dow, please continue.
Get
I
on
haven't
with it.
started yet. Give me a minute. Right. So, should the West be suspicious of Islam? Well, the truth of that is it's going to depend. Okay? It's going to depend if you're invested in pornography, if you're invested in alcohol, if you're invested in interest banking, if you're invested in drink, drugs, criminality, then probably you should be suspicious of Islam. Because Islam has come as an alternative way of life to that. Islam, what is it?
Could we add Judaism to that list?
Sure. Okay? But you can't become a Jew. So not very easily. So Islam has come as a option, an alternative to those vices in this world. Okay, the real question should be, should the West be suspicious of Muslims practicing Islam in the West? That's the question. And why? Why would you be? Because Tommy says so. Because Tommy said that you should be suspicious of this religion and suspicious of practicing, or I don't know.
All right, quick observation about his first point before I let him ramble on. He's basically saying, yeah, if you want to be suspicious of Muslims, it's because they're against vices or moral, they're against immorality, etc., etc. Now, without even addressing that and saying yes or no, my point is that should be parked. And above and beyond that particular question is what else we've been talking about. The attack on the apostates, the attack on the infidels, Islam's mandate to conquer and subjugate the world and spread Islamic law, the subjugation or essentially the misogyny, the pedophilia, Muhammad marrying 6/9 years old, et cetera, et cetera. So you see, this is again kind of like a smokescreen. We can debate if Islam is against or for morality. Yeah, I do believe it's against things like pornography. Good for it. And other things that he mentioned. But that doesn't change the fact that it's also for those other issues that we just mentioned. Does it?
Being Muslims, okay? So let's talk a little bit about Tommy's credibility. Because Tommy has spent the last 15 years of building his credibility upon being a white man from Luton. And he's been... Go on.
This debate is not about Tommy Robbins.
I'm getting to it. Right, sit down.
Yeah, that's right. It's not about Tommy Robinson or anyone else, but that's called the ad hominem attack, okay? When you can't actually respond to the position, then you try to besmirch the character of the people who are making that position. In this case, Tommy Robinson. A very old ancient tactic. So you say something I can't get around, and I just basically say, well, you're a horrible person, and therefore everything you say is wrong. It's really pathetic that this is the level of this debate, actually. I was expecting something a little more elevated.
Sit down.
The gentleman's made his point. Please take a seat.
Sit down. Are you in it as well? Are you in it as well?
The speaker will be heard.
Are you in it as well? I don't mind taking out the lot of you, mate. I don't mind. It's not a problem. Listen, so the credibility, it's important to base the credibility, okay, in the debate, of course. In the debate, of course. It's important to debate.
Gentlemen, please take your seats. Both of you gentlemen,
he just said he doesn't mind taking us out. So we have a Muslim again.
Yeah, in the debate, of course.
Mr. Sacredoti, can I ask you just to take your seats? Mr. Doward, can I ask you to just stop speaking for 1 second? Speakers will be heard with courtesy. If a point of information is offered and it is in decline, can I please ask that you allow the speaker to continue? Equally, may I say to the speaker, it is expected that points of information will be taken during your speech.
I took about 4 or 5.
I understand that, sir. And with that, I will ask the speaker to continue.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, can I please ask no interjections other than points of information?
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order,
which you briefed us must be taken. A threat to take out people on the other side is unacceptable and should be dealt with by the
Mr. Doward, have you made such a threat? And if so, I must ask you to withdraw
it was a threat within the debate, to take them within the debate, because we're in a debating forum.
Mr. Doward, can I ask you in that case to moderate your language
I will retract
and avoid the misunderstanding?
I will retract what I said, if that's a doable thing. Right. So let me get on. He's built his credibility from coming from Luton and telling people that Luton now is now a Muslim-run town. Predominantly, it has 40-something mosques. It has some extremist mosques, some extremist this and that, Sharia-run courts. But I'm also from Luton, you know, and I've also been in Luton for 56 years. I was born there, and I'm still there. I'm still living on the manor. As far as I know, Tommy hasn't lived there for at least 10 years. I believe now he lives in Spain, like most good patriots do. They move on to Spain. So let's talk a little bit about Tommy's time in Luton, because I'm not going to do any more with you, right? So talking about his little bit of time that he had in Luton, it's well documented that Tommy was in the Luton firm called the Mints.
Point of information. This debate is not about Tommy Robinson, what he does in his free time, what he did planning. Right. It's about whether the West should be suspicious of Islam.
He's the one telling the West.
This is exactly how you know the Muslim side is lost. All they have is ad hominem attacks. They can't. The thesis of the debate is, you know, should the West be suspicious is clear enough. And this guy just keeps going back and forth, back to Tommy Robinson, trying to talk about his character, his life, etc., which has absolutely nothing to do with whether the West should be suspicious. It should, of Islam.
Of Islam. So it's important that I take his credibility about how to say that. Okay, the arguments that he had in Luton while he was
the credibility of Tommy Robinson doesn't matter because millions of people are saying the same thing that he's saying. You're trying to act like Tommy Robinson invented this against Islam. Really lame.
Which was the Luton Town football firm gang, whatever it is, most towns and cities have them, okay? That's what his time. There was other gangs in Luton. Wasn't the only one. No. There was other gangs in Luton. One of them was called the Gambinos. One of them was called the Yellows. I know these are ridiculous names, but we are talking ridiculous people in these gangs at the time. Let me finish, please, okay? So I've taken a few points of information. You just seem to do it now just to stifle because, no, I'm not taking any from you, okay? Okay?
Mr. Robinson,
problems that these gangs had, as Tommy would say, was either religious and or racial between Pakistanis and his football guys was really not racial. It wasn't racial. It wasn't religious. It was normally, like most gangs, supply and demand of product. Okay, that's what it comes down to. Tommy would also say that there was an extremist group in Luton. No, there was an extremist group in Luton called Al Marjaroon. I agree with him. It was an extremist group, and I made my opposition to this group vocal at that time when they was there. You know, but even a broken clock can be right twice a day. This group was tiny. It was 8 strong, at most, with maybe 8 hangers-ons, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They were barred from every mosque I knew. I don't know all of the mosques, but they were barred from every mosque that I knew. Most of the shops in the town, the Muslim shops, they didn't want to let them in either. But the amplification of their message was done by the media. The media would go to the predominantly Muslim populated area in Luton called Berry Park. They'd walk down there with a camera, they'd stick it in front of these guys, and they would be straight in front of it. It was amplified deliberately to cause friction between communities. That small extremist group doesn't exist anymore. I believe they've been disbanded, and they don't even hang around with each other anymore. I could tell you, yes. Okay.
If you consume booze, if you consume drugs, and if you lend money for interest, should be suspicious of Islam.
No, I said if you invested in... Because Islam has come as an alternate choice to that. Islam has come as an alternate way of life to that. I think I explained it when I mentioned it the first time. There's a lot more that I want to tell you. Time does not permit me to speak here for an hour. So obviously, I can't go into detail about everything. I know in detail about this group of...
Yeah, but you sure have wasted your time, haven't you? Either talking about Tommy Robinson or giving us the classic, it's one extremist example which doesn't have Muslims and it's disbanded. So nothing to see here. That's what you wasted your limited time on.
Much room, because I was one of the trusted go-betweens from mosques in Luton that was trying to get them to stop talking. As he says, a lot of the time that there's not enough calling out of Muslims in the public. But it does happen. There was 500 mosques that wrote an email condemning the grooming gangs, but it never really got out there. And they all done that, okay? They done that years ago. I think it's 2013. Anyway, these mosques in Luton was a go-between between the Al-Marjoureen group and the mosque was me, because I was a trusted go-between. Even though I was anti this group, they still trusted me to go between them. And I know that most of Luton didn't want them there. It wasn't the case, okay? Like I said, I would love to say more. There's a lot more beans that I could spill, to be quite honest with you. So let me give you a version of Luton that
A lot more beans that I could spill, to be honest with you. What beans have you spilled? All you've done is talk about Tommy Robinson and just equivocate and actually not in any way, shape, or form address the topic. This is really shoddy and pathetic.
Tommy has a version of Luton that he recognizes. Let me give you a couple of points of the Luton that I recognize, okay? And I'll firstly go back to the first lockdown in COVID, where everyone was social distancing and taking it seriously and everything else. There was a Muslim charity in Luton, and it's still there actually. There was a Muslim charity in Luton. I was volunteering for them because I was off work for a few weeks, okay, due to the building sites shutting down. We were handing out food packs. Muslims were coming and handing in food and or giving us money to buy food from supermarkets and whatever. I'm going to say 99%, but it's more realistically 100%. But I'll say 99%. The food packs that I personally handed out were to white old age pensioners that lived in old age pensioner homes or care homes. I never once handed it out to a Muslim family, a Polish family, or any other, but it was purely white old age pensioners.
Information.
Yes.
Can I ask what was charity? What charity?
A crisis aid. Okay, and it's still there. It's in Sundon Park, okay? Right, so it's still there, the charity, okay? So we was handing out these things. I remember one 90-year-old man, he had to buzz me into his care home, and I put the bags outside and had to step up the hallway because there was social distancing. He come out buckled in half. I tried to speak to him. He told me, I've got cancer, I'm 93 years old, and I'm going to die soon. And none of my family speak to me. None of my family help me. This is the Islam in Luton that I recognize. Let me give you...
Well, if that's true, that's not real Islam. Guess what? Islamic charity, zakat, according to Islamic law, you're banned as a Muslim. By the way, zakat, Islamic charity, as it's translated, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, right? But guess what? You can't give this charity to non-Muslims. It's only for Muslims. Except on one condition. If somehow giving it to a non-Muslim, it somehow helps Islam. Maybe you're trying to win a non-Muslim over to Islam. Maybe you're trying to improve the public image of Islam. But strictly speaking, charity zakat is not to be given to non-Muslims. I actually wrote an article about this a long, long time ago, and USA Today picked it up and attacked me, and I had a back and forth with this woman reporter about it because they couldn't believe that how dare you? What? Zakat is like, it's just like charity. It's just like Western type charity. No, even in charity, Islam discriminates, believe it or not. So what he's talking about is more nonsense. Either this charity that he gave to this old white man was either he, as a Muslim, didn't do it correctly, or he was doing it more likely for a ulterior motive, which is to improve the image of Islam.
I was in Farley, not opposite the Parrot pub that Tommy would have remembered. Okay, there was a care home. I was working there for BTS, the council. What?
I do understand that the speaker is confused about the notion that
yeah, I'm not confused. I'm not confused. I'm talking about Islam. If you remember, I've said Islam quite a lot in my talk. Okay, don't stand up for a point of, because I'm done with you now. Yeah. So listen. So I was working at this care home. And a taxi come pulling in. Okay, I noticed that one of the women was in the passenger seat. She clearly was distressed. This big fat Pakistani brother with a big black beard jumped out, opened the car door. She had fallen over in the street. He'd picked her up, put her in the car, and he'd brought her back to the care home. He was literally in tears. He wanted my number. He wanted to go to the hospital. Why are you suspicious of these people? Who are these people to be suspicious of? Who are these people to be suspicious of, okay? Tommy is desperate to make connections between crime and Islam, especially when it comes to SA crimes. He's desperate to make this connection between the crime and Islam, even though nobody that commits these crimes says that they did it because of Islam. But when it comes to Muslims that do good things, NHS workers, doctors, nurses, charity care sector workers, which Islam is overrepresented in those areas, never does he want to make the connection between Muslims doing good deeds and Islam. It's only, no, I told you already. Never does he make the connection between Muslims doing good deeds and Islam. In fact, actually, when you ask these doctors, nurses, care workers, charity sector workers, why do you do it? They'll say, because my religion tells me to be a good person. My religion tells me to be in service of the people. He doesn't want to hear that. He just wants to paint this picture. You cannot serve two masters. You can only be loyal to one master. And I tell you now, without any hesitation, my master is Allah. La ilaha illallah. There is no God worthy of worship except Allah. Okay? But my God tells me how to serve you. My God tells me how to serve you. Okay? So I can be in service. I don't care if you're Muslim, non-Muslim, black, white, fat, thin, short, tall. I don't care. I will serve you because my religion and my master, Allah, tells me how to be in service to my community. No. I will give you many.
Mr. Jones-Lyons, thank you.
I've done more than two. Right. I will give you multiple examples. I will give you multiple examples of Muslims, people that have changed their lives and become better fathers, better husbands, better community members, better people in society, better daughters, better wives, better people in society because they've accepted Islam. Some of them are sitting in this room today. Maybe I could put myself in that category as well. Why are you suspicious? Why are you suspicious of these people? What Islam has only ever brought good to them and made them better citizens. Why would you be suspicious? And of course, yes, you can yawn. You know, this is what you do. It's not a problem. I'm not here for you. Yeah, and it's past mine too. Okay. Of course, I want to spread Islam. Who would I be if I had the truth and didn't want to share it with you people? Who would I be if I knew that Islam, or believed at least that Islam was the truth, and I didn't want to share it with you people because I thought it was the best thing? If I had a big plate of food and you was hungry, and it cost me nothing to give you food. It cost me nothing. It cost me nothing to give you food. Why would I not give you food? Why? I don't want to do any more points of call. You was devoided of your
UN
time.
fatwa, previous Muslims give
Gentlemen.
Sorry?
Previous Muslims giving charities and numbers.
No, there isn't. No, there isn't.
Gentlemen, please. Thank you. Please allow Mr. Dowd to finish his decline the point of information.
That's enough. I've said that's enough.
The speakers on this side have been egregious in attacking the...
Yes, it's been a constant. It's okay.
Can the chair please take some action?
Bro, thank you. I work better under pressure. I work better under pressure.
If I can ask you to stop 1 second. I thank the Honourable Gentleman for that point of order. I think on both sides there have been unwarranted interjections.
Yeah.
A point of order, if declined, please take your seat again. Do not continue to interject. I will say to the Honourable Gentleman, I have seen that from both sides this evening. It is not, as he puts it, on one side only. On both sides. Point of information is declined. Please take your seat again. Mr. Dowd, please continue.
Okay, so why would I not want to spread Islam? Why would I wish that I could take my heart and give it to you people for a minute so you could taste the sweetness of Iman. And then you would never be suspicious of Muslims again. There is not a single head on anyone's hair, apart from Tufty's, that I would touch unjustly. And that's inside and outside of this hall. I mean no harm to anybody. I will defend myself if I have to, but no Muslim that I know thinks like that either. Why wouldn't I want to share that? Where is the problem with that? My friend here, my colleague, is going to deal with the age of Aisha. I dealt with it for 10 or 11 minutes on Liam's podcast, so I don't think that I need to go into that again. My friend will deal with that. Okay. You mentioned the verse in the Quran about prepubescent women.
All right, before I forget, because he's continuing, I thought he was going to wrap it up. Again, his point is irrelevant. This point about Islam and Muslims are so good and they're engaged in social warfare, et cetera, which obviously we can look at more analytically and see why that's the case. I already told you that zakat, charity, is not meant for non-Muslims. All right, but for argument's sake, let's say he's right. Let's say Muslims are overrepresented in charity, et cetera, et cetera. That does not in any way, shape, or form negate what we were talking about. Okay, so yes, maybe Muslims are doing all those things, but the other things we spoke about, which are problematic, killing apostates and blasphemers and gays and the subjugation of Christians and Jews and jizya and the mandate for jihad, that's still part of Islam. So I just don't get this kind of logic. It's really embarrassing that grown people are using this and this is supposed to work somehow. Adults are arguing. Again, these are just smoke screens, red herrings, just going in circles, talking about not the real topic. Okay, Islam maybe does all those things. It doesn't, but let's say it does. The fact that it does that doesn't mean it doesn't do the other things too. So this is really, anyway, it is very
married.
Amateur stuff.
Okay, if you knew what you were talking about, you wouldn't have said it. The word that's used for the female in the Quran is a word that's used for women. That ayah of the Quran was revealed because a man come to ask the Prophet, how do I divorce my wife if she does not have periods because she is past the age of period? She's a mature woman. That's what that was for. Then the verse was revealed. No, that's what it is. You're not an expert on the Quran. You're not an expert on Islam. You present yourself to be an expert to people that don't know any better, but you're not talking to those people today. No more points of information. No more points of information. We talk about, I'll be 1 second, 1 minute. We talk about reform. They talk about want to reform Islam. How dare he? How dare they and how dare he say a man that is ignorant within the religion of Islam talk about reforming of Islam? Okay? People that come to talk here are people of intelligence, people of professorships, people that are intellects in their field. This man is not an intellect in the field or an authority in the field of Islam, and his presence about talking about Islam is a disservice to this place.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that speech advancing the opposition. I call upon Mr. Lawrence Fox to continue the case for the proposition.
All right, so just to be clear, we've seen some apologists or the opposition side, the Muslims, and they've given us absolutely zero of substance. I'm being as objective and honest as I can be. I would love nothing more than an actual rebuttal, something that I can sink my teeth in, something that's actually a challenge. But so far, it's just been ad hominem attacks, smoke screens, just beating around the bush, talking about things that have absolutely nothing to do with anything, cherry picking, and then accusing the other side of cherry picking. Really, really amateur, puerile stuff. So, and we are now at. So this is a 2 hour and 37 minute debate. Oh, we're at almost an hour. I'll tell you what. Let's go to 1 hour and 20 or thereabouts, and that'll be halfway through, more or less, and then we shall do a part 2 on another date. Soon. Let me know what you think in the live chat of that game plan.
Do I need to raise this up, or is it suitably heightened for the Luton community? Before Neville Chamberlain flew to Germany to appease Adolf Hitler, he said, European peace is what I'm aiming at, and I hope this journey may open the way to get it. And here we are, 87 years later, and European peace and peace in the West is being threatened again. Upon his return from Germany with his piece of paper, Chamberlain said, we are resolved that the method of consultation shall be the method adopted to deal with any other questions that may concern our two countries. And 338 days later, Britain was at war with Germany. So this morning I was thinking about this debate and the worthiness of consultation, which Chamberlain invoked, and the motion this House believes the West is right to be suspicious of Islam. And then I started thinking about a cartoon that I have here in this envelope. It's a cartoon which I think it instills in me feelings much more worrying.
We saw this fellow, didn't we? Should I continue playing him? I think because he had the interesting point for it joined late. All right, let's just play him. It's not that very long. Let's be consistent here and not cut and paste.
Suspicion. But, in the spirit of consultation, I'll just leave it here for the moment, if we're okay with that. So, first let us start with the word suspicion. There was a minority, going back to Chamberlain and that brilliant foreign policy, there was a minority who were gravely suspicious of fascism leading up to the Second World War and were very vocal in that suspicion, who thought that Chamberlain's appeasement policy was just wrong. That far from being the peace in our time he promised, our appeasement would only serve to embolden Hitler. One of those who faced the most criticism for his prescience, suspicious prescience perhaps, was Winston Churchill. He saw fascism for what it was, an existential threat to the West. No one needs a history lesson from me, but it is possibly worth noting now, especially here, and thanks to our lovely friends outside, that it is perfectly acceptable and actively encouraged in every school, university, TV channel and media organisation across the West to be suspicious of fascism. In fact, if we listen to our friends outside, that's not enough. You've got to be an anti-fascist. You've got to take direct action against fascism. Chamberlain today just seems like a moronic simpleton to me. So perhaps the deaths of millions of people could have been avoided if only Churchill's suspicion had been heeded, that his perspective acknowledged, but he stood alone whilst the train continued to hurtle towards us because we didn't want to upset anybody. It is an entirely natural and positive human instinct to be suspicious of many things, from teaching our children not to get in cars with strangers, to friends checking in on each other when one is going on a date with a new person for the first time. Suspicion is healthy. It sparks in every single sinew of our being. It is the product of generational caution in pursuit of survival. It's central to our very fundamentalist of instincts. It isn't prejudice, it's prudence. Suspicion isn't hatred either. It's pattern recognition. And I would like to make it clear at this point, Arla, I would like to thank you so much for inviting us to have this debate. And I know you've struggled so much with people trying to cancel you, and I know exactly what that feels like. So thank you so much. I think I would like to make it very clear that I am not here to express suspicions of individual Muslims at all. There are many Muslims, including within my own family, who I love deeply. And as a Christian, I am commanded to love my neighbour and to pray for my enemy. It is my most strongly held belief on this planet that every single human life is sacred and all lives matter. But I am absolutely not, and I will not, be commanded to love or submit to ideas or ideologies. As was mentioned earlier, as Jesus said, render to Caesar what is Caesar. Within one directive, he created the separation between church and state, which in Islam does not exist, which Islam literally means submission. So there is no church, there is no state, there is only Islam. My suspicion of Islam, therefore, is strongly, and I think reasonably held. Islam is a comprehensive social, political and military doctrine which leaves no part of its followers' lives untouched. As Andrew Hussey, the British historian, says, Islam more closely resembles a ruthlessly efficient war machine than a religion. Islam is borderless, expansionary and interested only in submission to Allah. And then for us, unfortunate, well, for some of us, unfortunate non-believers, we're given three choices.
Point of information, when was the last time there was a jihad declared against a foreign government and the expansion of Muslim lands into non-Muslim lands? When was the last time?
What's that got to do with what I'm talking about?
Well, you said that it's a military war machine. It's been around for quite a long time.
A point of order has been raised.
When you're giving points of information, you need to be very audible, so
I thank the ex-president for his. I'm not sure that's a point of order.
I'm also, as people may or may not have noticed, I'm not an Islamic scholar, and I'm not into giving you a history lesson about the Quran. But I will give you a history lesson into the bits of the Quran that I understand and the bits of Islam I understand through those that I love and from my readings.
As I had pointed out, for anyone who missed it, that guy's point is the Muslim guy is because this man that Islam is a war machine, and so the Muslims are saying, well, when is the last time that this so-called war machine actually called an offensive jihad? Yeah, it's been a while because it's not in a position to call an offensive jihad, which is to say individual Islamic countries. They would be crushed. If Egypt declared jihad on, I don't know, Italy, and said it's time to conquer Rome in the name of Islam, yeah, it would be crushed. So, and Islam itself makes ample room for in fact, jihad. You are actually banned if you're a caliph or a sultan from waging jihad unless if you know you can't win. So yeah, that's the answer to that.
Islam gives you three options, as far as I can tell, as a Westerner. Submit. Pay the jizya, the tax, which institutionalizes inferior status for non-Muslims in Islamic states. Or, excuse me, 3, war with Muslims. Right. Notably, within those 3 options that Islam offers you, there is not one option which says, let's live in peaceful coexistence as equals in a pluralistic society. Not once. Not once does it say that.
I'm certain you are aware that there is an entire chapter in the Quran, chapter called O Disbelievers. The final line of that verse in the Quran,
I am certain you are aware that there is a chapter and a verse that says something positive. How asinine. Anyway, I've already covered this, but yeah, there's a lot of verses that say a lot of things, but that doesn't matter. It's how it's all ultimately codified and understood through ijma, consensus of the ulama. Nobody cares what you say, young lady.
to you is your faith, and to me is mine. Are you aware of that chapter in the Quran, and are you aware of the teachings of tolerance the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah have taught us for centuries?
Christian, all right, thank you.
Tolerance for centuries.
I didn't want to start quoting Quran verse.
Think about that. Quran has taught Muslims tolerance for centuries. It's bad enough we can talk about history. I've already told you what the history is. All you have to do is go to any Muslim country and look at the difference. Look up a human rights organization known as Open Doors. Annually, they publish what's called the World Watch List, which ranks the 50 worst Christian persecution nations in the world. The overwhelming majority, about 37 every year, I count them, 36, 38, are Muslim. Why is that, Miss Tolerance? Why is the top 12 absolute worst persecutors of this list, something like 10 of them, are Muslim? And it's not just cultural. It's not like it's just African Muslims or Arab Muslims or, East Asian Muslims. It's all of them. You have African Muslims, you have African nations, you have Arab nations, Iran is on there. So why is that, Mrs. Tolerance?
Was because I didn't want to come here and start talking about, it says here that you chop people's heads off, it says here that you do that, and it says here that you do that. I'm sure that there are very, very, very many verses in the Quran that talk about peace and love and happiness. It's just all we get is the bombs, the running over, the knives and the beheadings. So I'll move on if that's all right. Thank you very much. I'm done. Move on. Thank you very much. So I've said, notably, peaceful coexistence with non-Muslims is not an opportunity offered. A position which can reasonably be held to say that it creates not just suspicion, but tension. within a Western, secular, liberal, Christian goldfish bowl that Tom Holland tells us we all live in, right? That's where we live. We do. No one knows anything anymore. Everyone's feelings matter. So one thing is certain and is backed up by all the data. Muslims living in the West are pretty suspicious of us. So I'm not going to talk about why the West should be suspicious of Islam. Let's talk about how suspicious Islam is of the West. The Policy Exchange report titled Unsettled Belonging, published in 2016, which claims to be the most extensive research of British Muslims ever conducted, revealed that, let's do it, 43% of British Muslims supported the introduction of Sharia, not British law, Islamic law. 53% preferred to send their children to school with strong Muslim values, suspicious perhaps of Western ones. Maybe, I don't know. 44% of schools should be able to insist on face coverings. Does this sound like a community which seeks integration? Do we have a right to be suspicious of those who reject our values and the societal norms of their host country? 24% sympathise with violence organised by groups to protect their religion. That's what the Muslims say. And 31% thought it was acceptable to keep more than one wife, illegal in Britain, but fine in Sharia, apparently. And 35% believe that the Jews have too much power in the UK. 52% compulsory halal. I could go on and on and on and on. But most important to me is the free speech of this. So let's get this out, shall we? 78% of British Muslims believe that no publication should publish pictures of Muhammad. An overwhelming majority. That rises to 87%. That's 9 out of every 10 Muslims that are walking the streets today in a country which absolutely abandoned blasphemy laws. Suspicion is not strong enough a word. The West should resist Islam in the strongest terms on free speech grounds alone. So here we are with this cartoon, right?
I'm listening.
And it's time to show that I will not submit. I will not adhere to the religious laws of far-off places. Now, my wife asked me not to show this for fear of repercussions in my family, but I told her that if I did not, then I had already submitted to Islam. So here we are.
Is it not enough that half the team that invited you to this debate were Muslim women who wanted to hear out your expression and your arguments? Is it not enough that I, as a Muslim president, have invited you to this chamber to give your arguments? Is that not enough justification and evidence for you to believe that we do believe in free speech? I will not become the president of a free speech society.
Thank you, Allah. May I? Thank you very much. May I finish? Excuse me.
Point of order having been raised, I'll hear the ex-librarian.
It's a long time since I've been in this chamber and knew the rules off by heart. In the House of Commons, and we model ourselves on the House of Commons, props are not allowed. I wonder whether the rule on props is the same in the Oxford Union.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his point of order.
Excuse me for one second.
One moment.
In the absence,
Mr. Fox, one moment, Mr. Fox. The ex-president is also raising a point of order, I think.
I'm just it's helpful to inform the ex-librarian and others, at least my 40th society, that ban was not extended and continues to find Israel and Palestine flag.
Thank you. So, right. I just want to wrap this up.
I am going to rule on the point of order. There is no bar in the forms of the House against the use of props. However, I would encourage Mr. Fox to make the point and move on.
I was until point of order. So it is in that spirit that I will not submit that I show you this as an Englishman who believes in free speech. I will not submit. I will not bow down.
But he kind of did, didn't he?
Right. So, I think which rather proves the point I was trying to make, that in this envelope lived your fear, and your fear of Islam, and what Islam will do to you that when you upset its very oversensitive sky wizard. And what lived in this room is a healthy and brilliant and noble British tradition of suspicion of Islam. I encourage you to pass the motion. Thank you very much.
So I've already mentioned this.
I
What he did was it was pretty slick. It was safe and smart for his sake, because he was able to make the point that, oh, look at all the Muslims and that pompous Englishman who's trying to sound so elevated and protecting Islam and trying to dissuade him from showing the image and whatnot. But he exposed how upset they got at the very thought that he would actually show an image of Muhammad, and he didn't. So he proved the point. But there was a little bowing down on his part, wasn't there? Because he didn't show what he could have shown, and the response would have been much more priceless. But hey, I'm not blaming the man. He wants to keep his head where it is. So let's continue. He scored a point nonetheless.
The honourable gentleman for that speech advancing the proposition, and indeed for his. We probably have some pens if you want it signed. We can arrange that later on.
Let's have more.
And I now call upon the President to continue the case for the opposition.
Right. There is anger in this room tonight. There is anger in homes and on streets and throughout communities that no longer feel safe and no longer feel like they matter. Anger from people who feel that no government in any party in a generation has told them the truth about why their lives are the way that they are, why their rent is unpayable, why they cannot get a GP appointment, why the country they knew is not the country their children are inheriting. I'm not going to stand here tonight and tell you your anger is wrong. I'm not going to dismiss you as a racist for asking honest questions about a country that has stopped working for you. And that is why I wanted this debate to be held, because we have seen what happens when people's anger goes unaddressed. It does not disappear. It looks for somewhere to go. And there are people in this country, people on that side of the argument, who have made it their business to be standing there.
Hold your horses, hold your camels. I saw someone comment and say that this woman's going to rant for 20 minutes. All right, we're not going to have that because, like I said, I want to do half. And at this point, we are at 1 hour and 12 minutes, which is a little less than half. But I'd like to actually deal with her arguments all at once and not cut it halfway. So I think I am going to stop the interview portion or the video portion and just offer some final commentaries about what we just witnessed. And then we will, I promise, we'll take this up again very soon. If not tomorrow, Monday, we'll continue with part 2. So the debate is, are we allowed to be suspicious? The debate's not, can we kick Muslims out? Can we keep Islam out? Can we all agree that Islam is inherently violent? No, it's, do we even have the right to start thinking these things? And that's enough to make people, lose their mind. And again, it's not, the Muslims who act this way, I get it. Whether they, of course, if you're a Muslim and you're in England and Britain, you're going to feel that way. But it's the idiotic leftist, as they call them, Brits, who are the ones who are behind this sort of mentality where you can't even ask the real question. And you feel so brave because you raised the question. Can we even talk about this? Can we be suspicious? And I'm not attacking the anti-Islam side. I get it. That's all they can do. But that's really the problem. This debate shouldn't even be had. This is a joke. Of course, everyone is suspicious. And the question is, should we be suspicious? Well, yeah, of course, because we are suspicious. If you are suspicious, then you should be suspicious, right? So, and the arguments we've seen, actually, I will be back. I'm going to play some more of it for you.
Ready to point it in a direction that serves them and, believe me, hurts you. The proposition does not have a monopoly on that anger. Mr. Robinson and Mr. Fox have built careers directing that anger at easier
How's it going, John?
Scapegoating Islam and Muslim communities, not because
did you have a good dinner?
Of your suffering,
Yeah, I had a great
not
dinner.
because we are a direction of
Okay,
your suspicion.
I'm doing a live interview.
But because
Once I'm done, I'll come in.
From a hollowed-out country, it is safer to scapegoat a minority, to set its citizens against one another,
that it ever.
All right. All right. I am back. And so, like I said, it's not even a question that should be debated. And the anti-Islam side, I agree. They made fine arguments, obviously. Good stuff. The anti-Islam side, I'm telling you, they have weak arguments because they have nothing to say. What can you say? If you are clearly in a position where it's been demonstrated that the position you're trying to defend is false, well, you have to engage in ad hominem attacks and straw man and smoke screens and red herrings and every other form of fake argumentation, because you can't actually address it head on. And that's exactly what we just saw, right? Everything we've seen is, well, what about the 1,200 years of tolerance? Yeah, it never happened. It was actually more aggressive under Islam. So I don't know what you're talking about. Or you're cherry picking when that's actually what they're doing. Well, what about this verse? Well, who cares about that verse? Or who cares how you think about that verse? I'm interested in Islamic law. I'm interested in true Islam, not what you believe, if you even believe that, and you're not actually being deceptive, which is another point, in fact. So the arguments, or the attacks on Tommy Robinson's person, as if this is what this is all about. Again, that really underscored to me just how there's no argument, there's no position to take, right? So let's. I'm going to take some more of your super chats, and then we will call it a night, because it is 11:30 p.m. where I am, and I need to go make my pasta. I'm just trying to see where I left off. I think we're here. Anthony Unplugged. No, I did that one. I think. I've learned so much from you. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Amazing disgrace. I wish you were at the debate. Yeah, we had that, and I said I'm glad I wasn't. And you can see why, because it's just nonsense. Cray. Fine work as always, Raymond. I hope the stars align so that I could have the chance to speak on these things with you face to face. It'd be a enjoyable, meaningful conversation. Keep chopping away. All right. Thanks, Cray. The Assassin of the Gray. When I am weaker than you. Oh, I think I've read these. Sorry. The West seems to believe if they put on the suit. Okay, maybe we're here. The Lady Gunsmith. The West seems to believe if they put on a suit, they're no longer terrorists. I'm suspicious of Ahmed al-Shara of Syria, but the White House invited him. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and the point about putting a suit is quite literally and figuratively the case. All they have to do is just put on the suit, speak the right words, talk about tolerance and diversity, and voila. Well, what's there to be suspicious of? Are people that really dumb? I guess they are. And that's why they are being punished accordingly. That's why they are suffering, because of their own stupidity. Zut Hassan. Your opinion on movies and video games trying to be historically accurate, but they add a... Wow, I think I may be repeating these. I remember this one. I'm sorry. Douglas, number of peaceful people irrelevant. Nazi Germany for Imperial Japan, many others, and that did not have a religion backing their actions. Love your books. Exactly. And that was one of the arguments we've seen, right? Well, what about the peaceful Muslims? What about the ones who did this and that? What about them? Does having them mean that the violent ones cease to exist? Again, it's like going to that analogy where I told you 100 candies in a jar. Okay, yeah, maybe 90 are great, but 10 or 5 or 1 are poison. So am I supposed to forget that because the other 90 taste really good? Oh, well, let's take a risk. Maybe we'll just die because, hey, those 90, 95 ones taste great. It's really a silly kind of logic that they're trying to foist on us. Amazing disgrace. Have you been at the debate? The smug look at that insolent brat girl turning sour would launch a million memes. Probably. I will be at a debate soon, actually, September 11th. Look up Winston Marshall. He has all the facts. He's organizing it. And you know what the question is? What we're debating? I forget. No, it's is Islam incompatible with the West? Okay. Momac gifted 10 Raymond Ibrahim memberships. Hey, thank you, Momac. That's kind of you. Amazing disgrace. Points of privilege are afforded by Western philosophy. Islam does not offer the option for wisdom to intervene. That's right, actually, very literally. In the 10th or 11th century, the doors of ijtihad was the idea that scholars can struggle with could engage in exegesis with the scriptures, were closed. That means that's it. This is how it is. And guess what? It ended up with what we call draconian, closed-minded Islam. Okay, the jihad, the intolerance. So you can't actually reopen it without being a heretic, a blasphemer who gets himself killed. Amazing disgrace. Words are one thing, actions deserve suspicion. There is over a millennia of actions that stand opposed to their words. Can we finally agree they lie? Yes, that's the point. That's what I'm saying. This is why, again, to really underscore why I'm very focused on the historical argument against Islam. We can talk about the scriptures, we can talk about the Quran and the Hadith, and that's all legit, and I do it too. But if you really want the ironclad argument against Islam, it's that, they've been doing this for 12 centuries, unwaveringly. Different manifestations, different caliphates, sultanates, all doing the same exact thing, okay, which we say only ISIS does, and ISIS isn't real, which is the attack on infidels and the subjugation and the massacres and the atrocities and the enforcement of Islamic law. That's the problem. That's I think if people really understood that, you'd understand that, okay, what on earth are we even talking about at this point? Hanif. Tommy Robinson identified radical Islam and grooming gangs, demonized and ostracized, whilst Majid Nawaz, former member of Hizb ut-Tahrir, now accepted as a benevolent spokesman. Double standards. Well, yeah, of course. Everything's double standards now. Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything much about Tommy Robinson's personal life, but I just really don't care. All I know is that he's making his arguments that, as I heard them today, or in this debate, as we heard them, are legit, absolutely legit. You don't need, I don't know, he doesn't have to be a great guy or a bad guy or whatever. That doesn't interest me. That's what's called ad hominem, where you try to deflect the argument by actually focusing on the man making the argument and saying, well, he's a bad person. It's sad to think that people still fall for this. Zot Hassan, would you say that modern human rights stems from Christianity, Christian values? Heard Dawa guys say human rights are immoral as if it's man-made. Well, yeah, human rights and all that sort of thing that we know and we prize are 100% come from Christianity. Why did they rise in the West? Why didn't they rise in Buddhist civilization or Hindu civilization or Islamic civilization? Well, what we call the West, when those things rose, was known as Christendom, because they are absolutely tied to Christian teachings and principles. And it's because they've been jettisoned and separated and torn away from their Christian backbone that they've kind of mutated and are now meaningless in being weaponized against the remnant of Christendom, which is the West. When is Raymond Ibrahim debating at Oxford? I don't know. Good question. Am I forgetting something? Kevin, from the last colony, Hong Kong, falling in 97 to this in less than 30 years. Brits, come on. Where's the British lion? Richard would slay you all. Imagine if someone like Richard the Lionheart could see this debate. His descendants, posterity that he fought and died for, are now wondering, do we have the right, after bringing in millions of Muslims who are basically killing and terrorizing us, do we have the right, after decades of this, to be suspicious? Will Muslims allow us? It's so disgraceful. Amazing disgrace. Speaking of disgrace, if you run for public office, you promise to serve the people. When that promise takes a backseat to Allah, it's a lie. Yeah, well, that's like virtually everyone. who runs for public office, including Muslims. But in this case, for the Muslims, that's what they're supposed to do. All right. They're doing it for Allah, and lying is just a means to an end, to a good, glorious, holy, pious end. They're enabling and empowering Islam. So what are you talking about? How's that bad from their perspective? Hanif, Muhammad skipped leg day. Deus vult. There we go with the leg day thing. I'll have you people know that since the leg day question, I've started leg day again. And just so you know, when I talk about injuries, I'm talking about a real injury. I have I had major ACL reconstruction. I have 2 screws. You can see them in x-rays holding my knee together. And there's a lot of pain, and it's bone on bone. I'm supposed to get a knee replacement, but I don't want to. So I take injections in my knee to deal with the inflammation. But having said all that, I've begun leg days again, and hopefully I won't pop anything out. Because I'm trying to teach myself to go light, which has always been hard and a challenge to me. But now, as I age, I've convinced myself either go light or just say goodbye to working out altogether. So I'll go light. Leg day. Lies destroy lives. Great idea, Ray. You should critique more debates. Yeah, do you guys like this? I've never done this, and it's actually worth it for me if you guys join me. I can't watch things like this on my own, because it's kind of pointless. But if we have a little team here, a little get together, and we can all chat, it sounds fun. So let me know in the comments, especially if that's something you'd like, and I will start looking at and commenting and playing more of these sorts of things and debates. Maybe we can have movie night too. All right. Zut Hassan. Muslim guy was desperate to find a gotcha on Lawrence Fox, like when Muslims try to trick critics by asking where in the Quran about Mo and Aisha. Well, yeah, exactly. This where in the Quran thing, or it's just they want everyone to memorize every single verse and be some sort of scholar, but you don't have to be. That's the point. Do you think your average Muslim knows where in the Quran this or that is? They don't. But they know that this is Islam. This is a teaching of Islam. They hear it in sermons. Okay, it's well known. It's just part of the fabric of the religion. They just like Westerners may not know, or probably don't know where to pull it out. So that again is another smokescreen. Whose picture is that? You mean the one that was supposed to be Muhammad? I have no idea. Not Muhammad, but the point was well made. Hanif Shah. Ray, what beer are you drinking? I'm hungry right now, so I don't know, Borsadi or something, if you must know. And by the way, it's Saturday night. I'm trying to relax. I think I can have a beer or 5 or whatever. Okay. Love your work. So zuttet. I'll take that as a compliment. Jim Talisman sent you an email offering debate prep assistance if you are interested. You sent me an email, did you? Okay, we'll see about that. Anyone who wants to contact me legitimately, you've got to go to my website, RaymondIbrahim.com, click on the contact. And social media, I don't really look at things. I should. I hope to start eventually. But, high five. King of leg day, squats or deadlifts? I used to really enjoy squats. Deadlifts I've done back in the day, but even now I don't really do squats. I'm just trying to rehabilitate myself, right, man? I can't even do leg extensions on the bad. They're both bad, but the really bad knee, I can't even do leg extensions. But, this is why I like to bike, but I haven't been able to bike because of my temporary exile. Is not very bike friendly, like being back at home. But anyway, it's all well, it's all good. But if I had to pick, I'd probably go with squats. Deadlifts are just, you're asking for trouble. Spinal problems if you don't do them right. Okay? Now, so we're going to end it there. Thanks for joining me. This has actually been kind of fun. I think I'm going to do this again, and I hope you'll join me again. And actually, feel free to send me topics or videos or debates or things of that nature that we can watch and review together. But this one so far, sorry, the Muslim side's not doing it for me. Not impressed. And this isn't because I'm anti-Muslim. I mean, I honestly, if there was a good response, if there was a good argument or some kind of rebuttal, I would be actually happy, because then I would really be able to, challenge myself and think about it. But there's just nothing. It's just really, really pathetic and lame. You would have thought they would try to muster up even, more skilled sophists who can, instead they got these like whiny little girls who are huffing and puffing, this Hermione Pakistani version woman screaming, and you can just, her heart rate's racing because she's so upset and outraged that anyone dares be suspicious of this religion that has created world havoc for 14 centuries. But I mean, that's oftentimes part of the argument, isn't it? The feigned outrage. I am so shocked and upset. How dare you? And that's supposed to be proof that you're wrong. Well, yeah, it doesn't work. Sorry. Not for people with an ounce of brains left. All right. All right. Thank you all for joining me. Be ready for part 2, which will be anon, not long from now. We'll deal with it, and we'll continue and give you a full wrap. And until then, anyone who hasn't seen part 2, you should probably watch this one, watch these videos, and we'll go from there. Have a good night. Take care. Bye.